Hello everyone, welcome back to Midnight Lullaby. I know many of you are here to drift gently into sleep. Before you close your eyes, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know where in the world you're listening from. Now, turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let the story carry you into dreams. Story 1. David disappeared 5 days before our wedding. 5 days of police reports and search parties, of his mother weeping on my shoulder, of me staring at my phone waiting for a text that never came. 5 days of the worst kind of limbo, caught between hope and despair, unable to plan a wedding or mourn a death. And then, on the third night, before we were supposed to say our vows, he came back. I was staying at my parents' house, unable to face the apartment David and I shared. It was past midnight when I heard the knock. Soft, almost tentative. My father went to answer it, and I heard his sharp intake of breath. "Vivian," he called up the stairs. It's David." I ran down so fast I nearly fell. And there he was, standing in our doorway, still wearing the clothes he'd disappeared in. Jeans and a flannel shirt, now stained with mud. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. His skin was the color of old paper, not pale paper. As if all the blood had been drained from his body and replaced with something else. He stood absolutely still, not swaying or shifting his weight as living people do. And his eyes, they looked at me, but they looked through me, too, as if I were made of glass. "David." My voice came out as barely a whisper. He smiled. It was David's smile. I'd seen it 1,000 times, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hello, Vivian. I'm sorry I worried you. I got lost, but I'm back now. We can still have our wedding." My father stepped protectively in front of me. "Son, you need medical attention. You've been missing for 5 days. Let me drive you to the hospital?" "No hospitals." David's voice was flat, emotionless. "No doctors. I'm fine. I just want to marry Vivian." His gaze fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "We can still get married, can't we? We can still have our day." Every instinct screamed at me to run. But this was David. The man who brought me coffee in bed every Sunday morning. Who cried at movies but pretended not to. Who'd proposed to me on a hiking trail at sunset, so nervous he'd dropped the ring twice, before finally getting it on my finger. "Wasn't it? Of course," I heard myself say. "But David, you need to rest. You need. I'll rest after the wedding." He took a step forward, and I noticed he made no sound. His footsteps were silent, as if he weighed nothing at all. 3 days. We'll be married in 3 days, just like we planned. But then he said something that turned my blood to icy. At midnight, in the cemetery. That's where it has to be. My mother had come down the stairs, wrapping her bathrobe around herself. "David." "What are you talking about?" "The wedding is at St. Anne's Church, at 2 in the afternoon. Everything is already arranged." "No." The single word was sharp, final. "It has to be at midnight, at Oakwood Cemetery. That's where." He paused, and for just a moment something flickered across his face. Pain. Fear. But it vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. That's where it has to be, for us to be together forever. He reached for my hand. His fingers were cold, not just cool, but cold like meat from the refrigerator, like something dead. I couldn't suppress my flinch, and I saw something flash in his eyes. Anger, maybe. Or hunger. I should go, he said, withdrawing his hand. I'll see you in 3 days, Vivian. At midnight. In the cemetery. Don't be late. Please, don't be late. And before any of us could respond, he turned and walked into the darkness. By the time my father thought to follow him, he'd vanished completely. We called the police again. They searched. They found nothing. Detective Morrison, who'd been handling David's case, came by the next morning looking haggard. Miss Chen, he said, I need you to be completely honest with me. That was David last night? I think so. He looked like David, but something was wrong. He was wrong. Morrison rubbed his eyes. We found David's car yesterday, out past Ridge Road, near the old quarry. There was blood, quite a bit of it, and signs of a struggle. The room tilted. I gripped the arm of my chair. What are you saying? I'm saying that the man you saw last night might not have been David Ashford, or if it was, he might not be entirely well. People do strange things after trauma. Head injuries can. His eyes, I interrupted. Detective, his eyes were dead, and he didn't smell right. He smelled like dirt, like a grave. Morrison's expression told me he thought I was in shock. Maybe I was. He left, promising to continue the investigation. But I could see he thought David was either seriously injured and mentally compromised, or that someone was playing a cruel joke. But I knew what I'd seen, what I'd felt when he touched me. That wasn't the man I loved. That was something wearing his face. I went to see David's great, Aunt Miriam, that afternoon. She was 93, sharp as a tack, and the keeper of the family stories. If anyone knew what was happening, it would be her. She lived in a small cottage filled with photographs and the smell of lavender. When I told her what had happened, she didn't look surprised. Instead, she went to an old trunk in her bedroom and pulled out a leather, bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. I hoped I'd never have to show this to anyone, she said, settling into her chair with a sigh. But you need to know. You need to understand what you're dealing with. The journal had belonged to her grandmother, Elspeth Ashford, written in the 1890s. The handwriting was spidery and difficult to read, but Miriam helped me through it. There's an old story in this family, Miriam began, about the bone bridegroom. Elspeth's own fiancé, Thomas, died 3 days before their wedding. Fell from a horse, broke his neck. But on the night before the wedding, he came back. Walked right up to her door, just like your David did. Asked her to marry him. Insisted they do it at midnight, in the graveyard. My mouth went dry. What happened? Elspeth almost went through with it. She loved Thomas desperately, but her own grandmother stopped her. told her the old tales about the bone bridegroom. Miriam's fingers trembled slightly as she turned the journal pages. It's not a ghost, Vivian. It's something older. Something that feeds on the grief of the living. When a man dies before his wedding, sometimes something else can climb into his skin. It looks like the man, speaks like him, remembers everything he knew. But inside, it's hollow, hungry. That's impossible. That's just a story. Is it? Miriam looked at me with ancient, knowing eyes. You touched him. Tell me true. Did that feel like David? I couldn't answer, because I knew it hadn't. The bone bridegroom wants only one thing, Miriam continued. To complete the wedding, to bind himself to the bride. And when the ceremony is done, when the words are spoken and the rings exchanged, the bride dies. Her life force is consumed, and she becomes like him. A thing wearing human skin. And then they walk the earth together, preying on others, until they find another wedding to corrupt. How do you stop it? Miriam turned to a specific page in the journal. There was a drawing there, crude but clear. A skeleton in a wedding suit, its jaw open in a silent scream. You have to find the real body, the actual corpse of the man who died. You have to make peace with it, to release him. Only then will the thing wearing his face lose its power. I spent the next 2 days searching. The police had found David's car, but not David himself. I drove out to the quarry, to the woods beyond it. I called his friends from the bachelor party, the party he'd attended the night he disappeared. Slowly, through tears and guilt, they told me the truth. They'd been drinking, celebrating. Someone suggested a midnight hike to the old fire tower. David had climbed it, being the adventurous one, the fearless one, and he'd fallen. 30 feet onto rocks. They'd panicked. Young men terrified and drunk. They'd hidden the body, called no one, scattered in fear. Where? I demanded of Jason, David's best friend, gripping his shirt. Where did you put him? The old family plot. The abandoned one behind Oakwood Cemetery. God forgive us, we buried him shallow. We were going to come back, call it in anonymously. But then he turned up at your door and we thought maybe he'd survived somehow. That we'd made a mistake. I didn't wait to hear more. I grabbed a shovel from my father's garage and drove to Oakwood Cemetery. It was the day before the wedding that was supposed to happen. The sun was setting as I found the abandoned section, overgrown with weeds and forgotten by time. I dug until my hands bled, until my arms screamed with pain. And I found him. David's body was there, exactly where Jason said it would be. Shallow, buried, wrapped in a tarp. The smell was horrific, but I forced myself to look. Forced myself to see the man I loved, broken and gone. His neck was twisted at an unnatural angle. His skin was mottled with decay. But it was David, my David, the real one. I knelt beside the grave and wept. Not the hysterical tears of the past week, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from my soul. I'd known, on some level, that he was dead, but seeing it made it real. I'm so sorry. I whispered to his body. I'm so sorry this happened to you. You deserved better. You deserved to live, to grow old, to be happy. I loved you. I love you still. But I have to let you go. I pulled out the engagement ring from my pocket. The ring he'd dropped twice before getting right. I placed it gently on his chest. Rest now. Please, just rest. No more pain, no more fear. I release you. I let you go. The wind shifted. The air grew colder. And I felt something. A presence, a weight, lift from the cemetery. I stayed there, sitting beside his grave, until midnight approached. I knew the thing would come. The bone bridegroom wouldn't give up its claim so easily. It arrived exactly at midnight. I heard no footsteps, but suddenly it was there. David's form, dressed now in a wedding suit I'd never seen. In the moonlight, its skin was translucent, and I could see shadows moving beneath the surface, as if it were hollow inside. Vivian, it said. It's time. Time for our wedding. No, Bo. I stood, trembling but resolved. You're not David. David is dead. He's here, at peace. And you have no claim on me. The thing's face twisted. The David mask slipped, revealing something beneath that hurt to look at. A confusion of bones and shadows and hunger. He promised you forever. I can give you forever. We can be together. He promised me a life. A human life, with all its joys and sorrows and endings. Not this, never this. I reached into my bag and pulled out the journal Miriam had given me. Inside was a prayer. Not a religious one, but something older. Words in a language I didn't fully understand, but which Elspeth Ashford had written down and noted. This sent the bone bridegroom back to darkness. I began to read. The thing screamed. Not with David's voice, but with something ancient and furious. It lunged at me, but it couldn't cross the threshold of the grave. The real David's presence, his blessed and released spirit, created a barrier the creature couldn't penetrate. I kept reading, my voice growing stronger. The words felt like weapons, like light against shadow. The creature began to dissolve, its borrowed form falling away like ash. The wedding suit crumbled. The David face melted. What remained was something I can barely describe. A writhing darkness, a hunger-given form, a parasite that fed on love and grief. And then, with a final shriek that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, it was gone. I collapsed beside David's grave, exhausted. The night was silent except for the wind in the trees. Above me, stars shone with a clarity that felt like blessing. I stayed until dawn. When the sun rose, I called Detective Morrison and told him where to find David's body. I told him about the accident, about his friend's panic. I didn't mention the bone bridegroom. What would be the point? The thing was gone. David could be properly buried now, properly mourned. The funeral was small. David's parents were destroyed with grief. His friends were racked with guilt. I stood beside his casket and said goodbye to the man I'd loved, the life we'd planned, the future we'd never have. But I also felt something else. Relief, gratitude. Because I'd loved David enough to let him go. Loved him enough to refuse the counterfeit version that had tried to claim me. Some nights, I still dream about that midnight encounter, about the thing wearing David's face, offering me forever. And I wake up grateful that I chose truth over comfort, real death over false life. Great Aunt Miriam died 6 months later, peacefully in her sleep. I inherited her journal, the book of family stories and old warnings. I keep it in a locked drawer, hoping I'll never need it again. But sometimes late at night, I page through it, reading Elspeth's account of her own encounter with the bone bridegroom. How she, too, had loved and lost. How she, too, had chosen the harder path of acceptance over the easier path of delusion. The dead should rest, she wrote in her spidery hand, and the living should live. When we confuse the two, when we try to hold on to what must be released, we create doorways for darkness. Love means letting go. That is the hardest truth and the most necessary. I've started dating again recently. Nothing serious yet. But I'm open to the possibility. Open to life with all its risks and heartbreaks. Because I know now what the alternative is. The bone bridegroom offered me forever. But forever without life, without growth, without the possibility of change. That's not love. That's not marriage. That's just another kind of death. I chose life. Messy, painful, finite life. And every day, I'm grateful for that choice. Sometimes I visit David's grave, the real one, properly marked now, in the main section of Oakwood Cemetery. I bring flowers. I tell him about my life, about the world he's missing. I tell him I loved him, and I always will. But I don't linger. I don't wish him back. I don't open any doorways. Because some doors, once closed, should stay closed. And the dead should rest. Story 2. I found the box 3 days after my grandmother's funeral. It was tucked in the far corner of her attic, behind stacks of National Geographic, magazines from the 70s, and a dress form draped with what looked like a wedding veil. The box itself was unremarkable. Brown cardboard, maybe 2 feet square, sealed with packing tape that had yellowed to the color of old teeth. No label, no writing, just the box waiting. I almost left it there. I'd been sorting through my grandmother's things for hours, making piles for donation, for keeping, for throwing away. The accumulated debris of 93 years takes time to categorize. But something made me pull the box out. I drag it into the circle of light from the bare bulb overhead. The tape resisted when I tried to pull it up, then gave way all at once with a sound like tearing skin. I opened the flaps and looked inside. Papers. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds, all covered in drawings. I pulled one out. The paper was old, brittle at the edges, covered in symbols I didn't recognize. Not letters, not numbers, but intricate patterns that seemed to move if I looked at them too long. Circles within circles, spirals that drew the eye inward, geometric shapes that hurt to focus on. Between the symbols, there were drawings. Figures, human, shaped but wrong in ways I couldn't quite articulate. Too many joints, or joints bending in impossible directions. Faces that were almost faces, but with features arranged in configurations that suggested something other than human had drawn them. And everywhere, woven through the symbols and figures, were words. But not in any language I knew. The letters looked almost like Cyrillic, or Arabic, or something even older. They formed lines and verses, passages that seemed to follow some kind of structure, like poetry or prayers, or incantations. I set the first paper aside and pulled out another. Same symbols, same disturbing figures, same incomprehensible text. Then another, and another. Every sheet was covered in these markings, each one unique, but following the same basic pattern. At the bottom of the box, I found a notebook. Leather bound, the cover worn smooth by handling. I opened it and recognized my grandmother's handwriting. The same careful cursive she'd used to write birthday cards, grocery lists. The first entry was dated 1952. They came to me again last night. The same dreams, the same symbols. I can see them so clearly when I wake. Every line, every curve. I have to draw them before they fade. I have to get them out of my head. I flipped through the pages, entry after entry, spanning decades. The same theme repeated. Dreams filled with symbols, the compulsion to draw them, the fear of what would happen if she didn't. 1967. I tried not to draw them. Tried to ignore the dreams, to let the symbols fade. But they don't fade. They get sharper, more insistent. And when I don't draw them, other things start to appear. Shadows in the corners that move wrong. Sounds that don't match any source. Yesterday, I saw something in the mirror behind me. A figure that wasn't my reflection. I drew for 6 hours straight, filled 20 pages. The figure hasn't returned. Yet. My hands were shaking. I'd known my grandmother my entire life. She'd been kind, practical, fond of gardening and mystery novels and PBS documentaries. She'd never mentioned dreams or symbols or things in mirrors. But here was the evidence written in her own hand. Decades of it. I kept reading. 1983. Martha asked about the drawings today. She found some in my desk drawer. I told her they were just doodles. That drawing helped me think. She seemed to accept this. But I saw the way she looked at them. That same expression people get when they see something that disturbs them on a level they can't articulate. I need to be more careful. I need to hide them better. Martha was my mother. She'd never mentioned this. But then, there was a lot my mother never mentioned about her childhood, about growing up in this house. 1995. The dreams are getting worse. It's not just symbols anymore. Now there are voices, speaking in languages I don't know, but somehow understand. They're teaching me things, showing me patterns. I'm afraid of what I'm learning. I'm more afraid of what will happen if I don't learn it. The entries grew more fragmented as the years progressed. Less narrative. More just observations, warnings, instructions. 2003. The symbols must be drawn in order. Always in order. A start with the foundation spiral, then the binding circles, then the figures. If you draw them out of sequence, you create gaps, and things come through gaps. 20 Hovendry burned 3 pages today. Drew them wrong. The proportions were off. Could feel something trying to use them as a doorway. Had to burn them immediately. The smoke smelled like copper and rotting flowers. The final entry was from 6 months ago, just before my grandmother's stroke. I'm forgetting the order. Last night I couldn't remember if the spiral goes clockwise or counterclockwise. If I lose the knowledge, if I draw them wrong, there will be nothing to keep them back. Someone needs to know. Someone needs to continue. The entry ended there, mid-thought, as if she'd been interrupted or had simply run out of strength to continue. I sat in the attic surrounded by these papers, these decades of compulsive drawing, and tried to make sense of it. My grandmother had been old, had suffered from memory issues toward the end. Maybe this was all just the product of a deteriorating mind. Dreams given more significance than they deserved. But something about the drawings themselves argued against that interpretation. They were too consistent, too deliberate. And there was something about them, some quality I couldn't name, that made my skin crawl when I looked at them too long. I should have put everything back in the box. Should have taken it straight to a dumpster and forgotten I'd ever found it. Instead, I brought the box home with me. That night, I dreamed. I was standing in a vast empty space, not dark, but colorless, like reality had been drained of pigment. Before me, suspended in nothing, were the symbols from the drawings, but they weren't static. They moved, rotated, reconfigured themselves into new patterns. And as I watched, I understood them. Not consciously, not in a way I could explain, but I understood their purpose, their function. They were barriers, walls, protection against something that existed in the spaces between spaces, in the gaps reality leaves when it isn't paying attention. Something was speaking, though I heard no voice. It was teaching me, showing me the correct patterns, the proper sequences. I needed to draw them, it explained. I needed to continue the work. The barriers must be maintained, or else. I woke up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat. It was 3 a.m. My bedroom was dark, except for the streetlight filtering through the curtains, painting everything in orange and shadow. On my nightstand, my hand had left a mark. Not just a smudge, but a clear symbol. One of the simpler ones from the drawings, traced in the condensation that had formed on the wood surface. I'd drawn it in my sleep. I turned on every light in my apartment and made coffee, determined not to sleep again. But as I sat at my kitchen table, I felt the compulsion my grandmother had written about. My fingers itched for a pen, for paper. The symbols were so clear in my mind, clearer even than they'd been in the drawings. I could see the exact curves, the precise angles. I had to draw them. No, that was insane. I was letting an old woman's delusions infect my own mind. The dreams were just my subconscious processing what I'd read. Nothing more. But my hand was already moving, reaching for the notepad by the phone. I drew for an hour. The foundation spiral first, counterclockwise. I knew with absolute certainty, then the binding circles, then the figures. The pen moved with a confidence I didn't consciously possess, creating lines and shapes that looked exactly like the ones in my grandmother's drawings. When I finished, I felt relief, like pressure releasing, like scratching an itch I hadn't known I had, and the apartment felt safer, more solid, as if something that had been very slightly out of phase had clicked back into alignment. I tried to go to work the next day, but I couldn't focus. The symbols kept appearing in my peripheral vision, not physically present, but imposed on reality like a heads-up display. Every surface became a potential canvas. Every blank space screamed to be filled with patterns. I left early, claiming illness. At home, I drew, page after page, following the sequences I somehow knew were correct. It was automatic, meditative. My conscious mind checked out while my hand continued to work. By evening, I'd filled 30 pages. That night, the dreams came again, but they were different now. No longer just symbols in empty space, but places. Rooms that didn't follow proper geometry. Hallways that led to themselves. And in these impossible spaces, I saw them. The things the barriers were meant to keep out. I can't describe them properly. Human language doesn't have words for what I saw. They were consciousness without form, or form without consistency. They moved through reality like water through cloth, seeping into the gaps, looking for weak points. Looking for places where the barriers had worn thin. Places where people had stopped drawing the symbols. You see now. My grandmother's voice, though she wasn't there. Or maybe she was there, in the way things exist in dreams without physical presence. You understand why I couldn't stop. What are they? I asked. Old. Older than human civilization. They've always been there, in the spaces we don't think about. Between seconds, between thoughts, between heartbeats. Most people never sense them, never know how thin the walls really are. But some of us, we're sensitive. We see the gaps. And once you see them, you have to maintain the barriers. Why me? Why you? It's not chosen. It's inherited. Your mother should have been next, but something in her mind resists. She can't see the symbols, can't hold the patterns. So it skipped to you. I'm sorry, child. I tried to spare you, but the work must continue. What happens if it doesn't? They come through. Slowly at first, just touches, influences, small corruptions of reality. But it builds. More and more of them seeping through, making the gaps wider, making reality more porous. Eventually, the barriers fail completely, and they flood in like water through a broken dam doll. How do I stop them? You don't stop them. You just maintain the barriers. Draw the symbols. Keep the pattern strong. It's all you can do. All any of us can do. I woke with the dream vivid in my mind and my hand already reaching for paper. That was 3 months ago. I've rearranged my life around the drawings now. I work from home. Told my boss I needed to care for a sick relative, and in a way, it's true. I'm caring for my grandmother's legacy, continuing her work. I draw every day, multiple times a day. The symbols have become as natural as breathing, as automatic as walking. I can feel when the barriers need reinforcement. I can sense the thin spots where reality has worn through. And I can feel them on the other side, pressing against the barriers, testing for weaknesses. My apartment is full of drawings now. They cover the walls, the floors, every available surface. To anyone else, they'd look like the scribblings of someone losing their mind. Maybe that's what they are. Maybe my grandmother was mentally ill, and I've inherited that illness along with her compulsion. But I don't think so, because I've seen what happens when I don't draw. Last week, I tried to stop. Tried to prove to myself that this was all in my head. I went 8 hours without putting pen to paper, without giving in to the compulsion. By hour 36, the corners of my apartment had gone wrong. Angles that should have been 90 degrees were something else, something impossible. Shadows fell in directions that didn't match any light source. By hour 40, I heard whispering. Not in my ears, but in my thoughts. Voices speaking in those languages I shouldn't understand but do. At hour 48, I saw one, just for a moment, materializing in the gap between my bedroom and hallway. A space that had become somehow wider than it should be. It wasn't fully formed, more suggestion than substance. But I saw its intention, felt its hunger. I drew for 6 hours straight, filling page after page with increasingly complex patterns. The thing disappeared. The angles corrected. The shadows fell normally again. I haven't tried to stop since. Sometimes I wonder about other people like my grandmother and me. How many of them are there, scattered around the world, drawing their symbols and maintaining their barriers? How many generations has this gone on? Is this how reality stays stable? Through the obsessive work of people everyone else thinks are crazy. I've started looking at other people differently now. That woman at the coffee shop who's always doodling in her notebook. Are those just doodles? The old man in the park who draws elaborate chalk patterns on the pavement. Does he see what I see? How many of us are there, maintaining the walls between what is and what waits to be? I found another box last week, hidden even deeper in my grandmother's attic. This one contained drawings from her mother, my great-grandmother. Same symbols, same compulsions dating back to the 1920s. And beneath those, a letter written in 1889 by someone whose relationship to me I'd have to trace back 4 generations to establish. To whoever inherits this burden, it began. You are not alone. You are not mad. The work is real, and it is necessary. Guard the barriers. Draw the symbols. Keep the walls strong. For if we fail, if we falter even for a moment, they will come through. And once they come through, there is no sending them back. The letter was signed with a symbol I recognized from the drawings. The foundation spiral, drawn with careful precision. I've started my own notebook now, documenting the dreams, the symbols, the sequences. One day, someone will inherit this from me. My daughter, if I ever have one, or some other descendant whose mind is shaped right to see the gaps. And they'll find my boxes and my drawings. and they'll probably think I was crazy. Until they dream. Until they see the symbols appearing in their peripheral vision, demanding to be drawn. Until they feel the things on the other side pressing against reality's thin walls. Then they'll understand. Then they'll pick up a pen and continue the work, as I continue it, as my grandmother continued it, as others have continued it for generations uncounted. We are the mad scribblers, the obsessive artists, the people who can't stop drawing symbols no one else understands. We are the barrier keepers, and we are all that stands between reality and the things that wait in the gaps. My hand is cramping. I've been drawing for 3 hours now. But I can feel a thin spot forming in the corner of my bedroom. I can sense reality wearing through like fabric rubbed too long in the same place. So I'll keep drawing. I'll always keep drawing. Because the alternative is unthinkable. The box sits on my desk, surrounded by my own drawings. Inside are my grandmother's papers, my great-grandmother's papers, pages and pages of symbols drawn by hands now dust. One day, my drawings will join them, and someone else will find the box. Someone else will open it and think they've found the ravings of a madwoman. Until they dream, until they see, until they understand that the walls are thin and we are the ones who keep them strong. My pen is moving again. The symbols flow, the barriers hold. For now, Story 3. I found the cassette tape at an estate sale on a Saturday morning in November. The house had belonged to Dr. Helena Voss, a psychologist who died alone at 93. Her body undiscovered for 2 weeks until neighbors noticed the smell. Her entire life was being sold off. Furniture, books, clothing, decades of accumulated possessions, reduced to price, tagged lots. The tape was in a box of miscellaneous items, unmarked except for a date written in faded blue ink on the label. March 15, 1983. I collect obsolete media formats, vinyl records, VHS tapes, cassettes. I'm drawn to these physical artifacts of recorded sound and image. There's something haunting about them. These captured moments frozen in deteriorating magnetic strips and aging grooves. Ghosts in plastic cases. So I bought the box. $3 for 15 cassettes, most of them blank. A few with handwritten labels that said things like Session 47 and Patient Interview. JM. I should have paid more attention to those labels. Should have recognized what I was buying, but I didn't. I just brought them home, added them to my collection, and forgot about them for 2 weeks. Then, on a quiet Tuesday evening, when I was cataloging my recent acquisitions, I decided to listen to the unlabeled tape, the one dated March 15, 1983. I put it in my vintage cassette deck, pressed play, and heard breathing. Not the faint hiss of blank tape, not the mechanical sound of a recording device running. Breathing, human breathing, deep, slow, rhythmic inhalations and exhalations. I listened for 3 minutes, just breathing, nothing else. Then it changed. The rhythm broke. The breathing became faster, shallower, panicked. The sound of someone hyperventilating, struggling for air, and beneath it, so faint I almost missed it, a voicey, "Help me." the tape ended. Just clicked off mid-breath, as if whoever was recording had stopped abruptly. I rewound it, played it again. The breathing was the same, slow at first, then panicked. The voice at the end, barely audible. Help me. I checked the tape carefully. No other labels, no other markings. Just that date. I went online, searching for information about Dr. Helena Voss. Found an obituary, a few old articles about her career. She'd been a prominent psychologist in the 1970s and 80s, specializing in trauma therapy and hypnosis. She'd published several papers on recovered memory and dissociative states. And then, in 1983, she'd abruptly retired. No explanation, no farewell. She'd closed her practice, sold her office, and withdrew from professional life entirely. The same year as the date on the tape, March 15th, 1983. I played the other tapes from the box. Most were exactly what the labels suggested. Therapy sessions, patient interviews, clinical notes dictated after appointments. All professional, all mundane, except one, labeled Session 47, dated March 14th, 1983. The day before the unmarked tape, I played it. Dr. Voss's voice, professional and calm. Session 47. Patient JM. Continuing work on recovered memories of childhood trauma. Patient has been under for approximately 20 minutes, achieving deep trance state. A pause. Then another voice, younger, male, slurred with hypnotic suggestion. I'm going down, into the dark place, where the memory is. Good. Take your time. You're safe. You can come back whenever you want to. It's cold here. Dark. I can't see. That's all right. Just feel. What do you sense? Someone else is here, in the dark with me. A longer pause. When the young man spoke again, his voice had changed. Flatter, emptier. He says I shouldn't be here. Says I need to go back, but not to where I came from. Somewhere else. Deeper. JM, I think we should end the session. On the count of 3, you'll wake. He says you shouldn't have brought me here, doctor. Says you opened a door. Says doors go both ways. Wake up. Now. 1, 2, 3. He's coming through. He's using me. He's the sound of something falling. A crash. Dr. Voss's voice. No longer calm. Edged with FM. Wake up. JM. And then breathing. The same breathing from the other tape. Deep, slow. Wrong. A voice that wasn't JM's, wasn't Dr. Voss's. Thank you for the door, doctor. I've been waiting so long. The tape ended. I sat in silence, my hands shaking. This wasn't therapy. This was something else. Something that had happened during what should have been a routine hypnosis session. Something that had caused Dr. Voss to retire the very next day. I searched for JM. Any patient of Dr. Voss's with those initials around that time. Found a name in an old newspaper article. James Murphy, 27, reported missing on March 15th, 1983. Last seen entering Dr. Helena Voss's office for a therapy appointment. Never seen again. The date on the breathing tape. I should have stopped there. Should have taken the tapes to the police, or destroyed them, or done anything but what I actually did. But I needed to know what happened. Needed to understand. I played the breathing tape again. And this time, I really listened. The breathing wasn't random. There was a pattern to it. A rhythm that seemed deliberate, almost like speech without words. And when the panic started, when the breathing became desperate, I could hear something else underneath it. Wet sounds. Choking. The sound of someone drowning in air. And that voice at the end, the plea for help. I realized it wasn't on the tape originally. It was being added each time I played it, getting louder with each listen. Help me. Please. Can you hear me? I stopped the tape, ejected it, held the cassette in my hands, feeling the weight of it. This little plastic case containing 40-year-old magnetic tape, and whatever was recorded on it, or whatever was using the recording to reach out. That night, I dreamed of drowning, not in water, but in darkness, being pulled down into something vast and cold, while I struggled for breath that wouldn't come. And somewhere far above, I could hear breathing, slow, rhythmic, patient, waiting for me to stop struggling. I woke gasping, my room dark except for the clock, 3:15 a.m., and from my living room, where my cassette deck sat on a shelf, I heard something. Breathing. I hadn't left the tape in the deck. I'd put it back in its case, stored it in the box with the others. But the breathing was coming from the living room, unmistakable. I got up, moved slowly down the hall. The sound grew louder, not from the cassette deck, from the cassette itself, sitting in its case in the closed box. Breathing. Deep, slow, patient. The same rhythm as on the tape, but playing without any device, just emanating from the cassette, as if it were a living thing. I grabbed the box and took it outside, set it on the curb with the trash, walked back inside, locked the door. The breathing followed me. Fainter now, but still audible, coming from inside my apartment, even though the tape was outside, coming from inside my head. I spent the next 3 days trying to ignore it. Tried to convince myself it was tinnitus, stress, a psychological reaction to listening to disturbing content. But the breathing persisted, constant, unchanging. A reminder of something I'd heard and couldn't unhear. On the 4th day, I went back outside. The trash had been collected. The box was gone. But the breathing continued. I found Dr. Voss's old office address in the archived business listings. The building still stood, converted to condos now. I went there, stood outside, listened. The breathing was louder here, much louder. I talked my way inside, told the current resident I was researching the building's history. She let me into the apartment that had been Dr. Voss's office. "It's weird you should ask," she said. "We've been having issues since we moved in. Strange sounds, like someone breathing, but only at night. Our landlord thinks it's pipes. Do you hear it now?" She paused, listening. "No, but it usually starts around midnight." Why? I could hear it. Right now, in full daylight, I could hear breathing coming from the walls, the floor, the air itself. Did Dr. Voss leave anything behind? Any files, records? The building was completely renovated. They stripped everything down to the studs. If there was anything here, it's long gone. But it wasn't gone. Whatever had happened here in March 1983, whatever door Dr. Voss had accidentally opened during that hypnosis session, it was still open, still breathing, still waiting. I found James Murphy's family in the phone book. His sister, Catherine, still lived in the area. I called her, explained who I was, asked if we could talk about James. She invited me to her home that same afternoon. Catherine was in her 60s now, gray-haired and tired-looking. She showed me pictures of James, a smiling young man with kind eyes. He was trying to remember something, she said. Some trauma from childhood. He was convinced it was important. That remembering would help him understand himself better. So he went to Dr. Voss. She was supposed to be the best. What happened? He went for his appointment. Never came home. Police investigated, but there was no evidence of anything. Dr. Voss claimed he never showed up for the session. Said she waited an hour, then gave up and went home. She lied. I know. I always knew. But I couldn't prove it. And then she retired, sold everything, disappeared. I tried to find her, tried to get answers, but she'd covered her tracks too well. Did James ever tell you what he was trying to remember? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. He said he remembered drowning. Not almost drowning, actually drowning. He remembered dying, sinking down into darkness, struggling for breath. But obviously he hadn't died. He was alive, so the memory didn't make sense. He thought it might be metaphorical, a way his mind was processing some other trauma. What if it wasn't metaphorical? What do you mean? What if he actually remembered drowning? What if some part of him had experienced that death and carried the memory? She stared at me. That's impossible. Is it? Doctor? Voss used deep hypnosis, guided her patients into trance states where they could access buried memories. What if James accessed something that wasn't his memory? What if he touched something else's experience? Something that had drowned, had died, and was somehow preserved in that state. You're talking about possession. I'm talking about a door. Doctor. Voss opened a door in James's mind, and something came through. Something that had been trapped in the experience of drowning, locked in that moment of desperate breathing and failing lungs. And when it found a way out, it took James. I nodded, and left something behind. An echo, a recording of that moment, playing over and over. Catherine's hands were shaking. How do you know all this? Because I've been listening to it, and now I can't stop hearing it. I showed her the tape. I'd retrieved it from the trash before coming here, unable to leave it behind despite everything. She took it, held it carefully, like something precious and terrible. What do we do? She asked. I don't know. But I think we need to find Dr. Voss. She's the only one who might know how to close the door she opened. Dr. Voss's nursing home was 2 hours north. A grim facility that smelled of disinfectant and resignation. She'd been moved there after being found in her home, incapacitated by a stroke. She couldn't speak, couldn't walk, but she could hear. I sat beside her bed, the tape player on my lap. She stared at me with eyes that held recognition and terror. "You know what this is," I said, holding up the tape. "You know what you did." A tear ran down her weathered cheek. "I'm going to play this for you, and you're going to tell me, however you can, blinking anything, how to stop it." I pressed play. The breathing filled the room. Slow, deep, patient. Dr. Voss's eyes widened. Her mouth opened, trying to form words that wouldn't come. The breathing accelerated, became panicked. And then that voice, louder than I'd ever heard it. "Help me. Please, it's been so long, so dark. Can't breathe. Can't die. Just this moment forever. Help me." Dr. Voss was shaking, violently, her hands clutched at her blanket, her eyes rolling back. She managed one word, forced through paralyzed lips. "Breathe." "What?" "Breathe with." I understood. James Murphy had drowned, or accessed the memory of drowning. And in that hypnotic state, guided by Dr. Voss, he'd become trapped in that moment. The moment between life and death, struggling for breath that wouldn't come. And that moment had consumed him, replaced him, taken his place in the world. The breathing on the tape wasn't just a recording. It was James, still trapped in that instant, still drowning, still desperately trying to breathe. And the only way to free him was to join him in that moment. To breathe with him. To share the experience so completely that the moment could finally end. I closed my eyes, listened to the breathing, and I matched it. Slow inhalation, deep exhalation, matching the rhythm exactly. The panic started, the desperate gasping, and I stayed with it. Breathing faster, shallower, feeling my lungs burn, as if they were filling with water, feeling the darkness close in. I was drowning. Not metaphorically, actually drowning. Experiencing James's last moments. The terror and pain and desperate struggle. And I kept breathing with him, sharing it, taking part of the weight. The voice came again. "Thank you. Oh God, thank you. I can feel it ending. I can feel..." The breathing stopped. Just stopped. Mid-gasp. The tape continued running, but there was only silence now. I opened my eyes. Dr. Voss had collapsed back on her pillow, her face peaceful. Dead. She'd held on long enough to give me the answer, and then let go. Catherine called the next day. "They found him," she said, her voice breaking. "James, his body. In a storage unit Dr. Voss had been renting since 1983. He'd been there the whole time. They said he drowned. That his lungs were full of fluid. But there was no water in the unit."
"No explanation for how."
"I know," I said quietly. The coroner said it was like he'd been preserved in the exact moment of death. Like time had stopped for his body 40 years ago and only started again now. I looked at the tape, sitting silent on my desk. The breathing was gone. The moment had ended. James Murphy had finally died, really died, instead of being trapped in the eternal instant of drowning. But I can still hear it sometimes. In quiet moments, late at night. I hear that desperate breathing. Feel the panic of lungs filling with darkness. Experience the weight of being trapped in a single, terrible moment, unable to move forward or back. because I shared that moment with him, breathed with him, and some echoes never really fade. I donated the rest of Dr. Voss's tapes to an archive, unlistened to. I don't want to know what other doors she opened, what other moments she trapped people in, what other desperate voices might be calling for help from decades-old recordings. Some things should stay buried. Some doors should stay closed. Some breaths should be allowed to end. But late at night, when the world is quiet and I'm alone with my thoughts, I sometimes wonder how many other moments are out there, trapped on forgotten tapes in estate sales and thrift stores and storage units. How many people are still frozen in single instants of trauma, breathing and breathing and breathing, waiting for someone to hear them. And if I listen carefully, in the silence between heartbeats, can I hear them all? A chorus of trapped breaths, desperate and eternal. I think I can, and I think they hear me too, breathing with them, whether I want to or not. Story 4. I've been a night shift worker at the Transit Authority for 11 years. I know every station on the Blue Line, every quirk of the system, every strange echo and mechanical groan that sounds almost human but isn't. Almost human is the key phrase there, because when you work underground long enough, you learn to distinguish between the sounds that belong and the sounds that don't. The sounds at Riverside Station don't belong. Riverside is the last stop on the Blue Line, the terminus where trains turn around and head back toward the city center. It's also the oldest station in the system, built in 1902, when they still used gas lamps and didn't fully understand what excavating that deep might disturb. The platform is longer than it needs to be, stretching back into darkness that the fluorescent lights don't quite reach. No one uses the back half of the platform. There's no official reason why. No signs, no barriers. People just don't. They cluster near the front, near the stairs, even when the platform is nearly empty, as if some instinct tells them to stay in the light. I used to think it was coincidence. Then I started hearing my name. It began 3 months ago, on a Tuesday night around 2 a.m. I was doing a routine safety check, walking the platform, checking for debris, making sure the emergency systems were functional. Standard procedure. I'd done it 1,000 times. I was about halfway down the platform when I heard it. Thomas, clear as day. My name? Spoken in a voice that sounded like it was coming from the dark end of the platform. I stopped, flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. Hello. Station's closed. You need to leave. Nothing. Just the hum of electricity and the distant rumble of trains on other lines. I continued walking, telling myself it was acoustics. Sound traveling strangely through the tunnels. Someone's conversation from street level, somehow making its way down here. Thomas, come here. Closer this time. Definitely coming from the darkness ahead. The voice was strange, not male or female exactly, but something in between. And there was a quality to it, a resonance, like it was being spoken in a space much larger than the station. This is private property. I called out, my hand moving to the radio on my belt. I'm calling security. Thomas, we've been waiting. I turned around, started walking back toward the stairs, toward the light, toward the rational world of schedules and electric lights and explanations. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Not shoes on concrete. Something softer. Something that dragged slightly between steps. I didn't run. Running would mean I was afraid. Would mean acknowledging that something was wrong. I walked quickly, professionally, like I had somewhere to be. The footsteps kept pace exactly. Never getting closer, never falling behind. When I reached the stairs and looked back, the platform was empty. I filed no report. What would I say? That I heard voices and phantom footsteps. That I was spooked by an empty station. I'd worked in the subway for over a decade. I'd seen rats the size of cats. I'd dealt with disturbed individuals. I'd found things in those tunnels that would turn your stomach. I wasn't going to be scared by acoustics, but I started bringing a partner on my riverside checks. The second time I heard my name, I wasn't alone. Marcus was with me, a newer guy, enthusiastic about procedure and safety protocols. We were walking the platform together when it happened. Thomas. I stopped. Marcus kept walking, oblivious. Did you hear that? Hear what? He turned back, confused. Someone said my name. I didn't hear anything, man. You okay? Thomas, come here. Come see. Conloader now. Insistent. I could hear it clearly. But Marcus's expression told me he heard nothing. You really don't hear that? Hear what? Thomas? You're freaking me out. Thomas, come down into the dark. Come see what we've found. I realized then that the voice wasn't coming from the platform. It was coming from below, from the tracks, from the tunnel that stretched beyond the platform into absolute darkness. I think we should go, I said. Marcus looked relieved. Yeah, okay. This place is giving me the creeps anyway. As we walked back toward the stairs, I glanced over my shoulder. For just a moment, I thought I saw shapes in the darkness at the end of the platform. Tall, thin shapes that stood too still to be human. But when I blinked, there was nothing. I requested a transfer. Asked to be moved to day shift, to a different line, to anything that didn't require me to check Riverside Station at night. My supervisor denied it. Budget cuts meant we were understaffed. I was needed on nights. The calls became more frequent. Every shift at Riverside, I'd hear my name. Sometimes it was a whisper, barely audible over the station noise. Sometimes it was loud enough that I'd spin around. Certain someone was standing right behind me. But it was always coming from the dark end of the platform. Always from that space beyond the lights. And it was always the same invitation. Come here. Come see. Come down. I started researching the station's history. Found old newspaper articles, construction records, archived reports. What I discovered made the voice make terrible sense. During the initial excavation in 1901, they'd hit an anomaly. The construction reports were vague, using careful language about geological irregularities and unexpected cavities. But between the lines, I could read what they'd actually found, a cave system. Natural or man-made, the reports didn't specify. But it was extensive, running beneath where the station would be built. The decision was made to seal it. Pour concrete, build the station foundation over it, pretend it didn't exist. Faster and cheaper than exploring or reinforcing it properly. But one report, buried in the archives, mentioned something else. 3 workers had disappeared during the sealing process. Gone into the cavity to set charges, never came back out. The company covered it up, paid off families, claimed the men had simply quit and left town. They sealed the cavity anyway, built the station over it, and never mentioned it again, except the sealing hadn't been complete. There were gaps, cracks, places where the deep darkness could seep up into the station, places where whatever was down there could reach up and call to people. I found the access point on a Thursday night. I wasn't looking for it. I was trying to avoid the dark end of the platform entirely, staying in the lit areas, doing my checks as quickly as possible. But I dropped my flashlight. It rolled, bounced, skittered across the platform, and disappeared over the edge, down onto the tracks. Cursing, I climbed down to retrieve it. Station protocol forbids going onto the tracks, but I needed that flashlight. It was city property. I'd have to file a report if I lost it. The flashlight had rolled to the tunnel mouth. Right at the edge where the platform lights ended, and the track disappeared into darkness. I picked it up and was turning to climb back up when I saw it. A gap in the tunnel wall, about 3 feet high, 2 feet wide. The concrete around it was crumbled old, revealing a space behind, and from that space I could hear breathing. Deep, slow, rhythmic breathing. Multiple sources not quite synchronized. "Thomas, you came." The voice was coming from the gap, from whatever space lay beyond. "Thomas, come in. Come see us. Come join. I should have run. Should have climbed back onto the platform and never looked at that gap again. But there's something hypnotic about a voice that knows your name. Something compelling about an invitation spoken in the dark. I found myself moving closer, shining my flashlight into the gap. The beam revealed a cavity beyond. Not a natural cave, but something else. The walls were too smooth, too regular, man-made but old, far older than the subway station, and extending back into darkness that my flashlight couldn't penetrate. "Come in, Thomas. We've been waiting so long, so very long." In the flashlight beam, I could see shapes. Human-shaped but wrong. Too thin, too tall. Standing in postures that shouldn't be possible. They didn't move, but I could feel them watching. Could feel their attention focused on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Who are you?" My voice came out as a whisper. "We are the ones who fell. The ones who dug too deep. The ones who found what was hidden and were changed by it. Come see, Thomas. Come see what we've become. Come see what you could become." One of the shapes moved, stepped forward into my flashlight beam. It had been human once. The tattered remains of clothes suggested as much. Work clothes from the early 1900s, construction gear. But the thing wearing them was no longer recognizably human. The body was elongated, stretched like taffy, limbs too long and bent at too many angles. The head was featureless, smooth, as if the face had melted away and never reformed. But it could speak. Somehow, impossibly, it could speak. The darkness changes everything, Thomas. Down here, beneath the stone. Beneath the city, beneath all the light and noise and certainty of the world above. Down here, different rules apply. We learned that. We changed. We adapted. And now we call others to join us. I don't want to join you. Don't you? You're tired of the light, Thomas. We can feel it. Tired of pretending the world makes sense. Tired of surfaces and explanations and rational thought. You want to sink down into the dark where nothing has to make sense anymore. Where you can stop being what you are and become something else. Something free. It was right. God help me, it was right. I was tired. Tired of working nights. Tired of empty stations and strange sounds, and the constant low, level fear that came with working underground. Tired of going home to an empty apartment. Tired of a life that felt like it was happening to someone else. The darkness it was describing sounded peaceful. Final. A place where I could stop struggling and just be. Whatever being meant down there. I took a step toward the gap. Thomas. A hand grabbed my shoulder, yanked me back. I spun around to find Marcus standing on the tracks behind me, his face pale. What the hell are you doing, man? I've been calling you for 5 minutes. I looked back at the gap. The shapes had retreated into darkness, but I could still feel them watching. Still hear that slow, synchronized breathing. We need to seal this, I said. Seal what? Thomas, you're staring at a wall. There's nothing there. I looked again. The gap was gone. Just solid concrete, old and weathered but intact. No opening. No cavity. No shapes in the darkness. But I could still hear the breathing. Marcus made me take the rest of the night off. Insisted I see the company doctor. Get checked for carbon monoxide exposure or a head injury or something that would explain my behavior. The doctor found nothing wrong. My oxygen levels were fine, no signs of neural damage, no indication of anything that would cause hallucinations. But I knew what I'd seen, what I'd almost done. I requested another transfer. This time, I was more honest. Told my supervisor that Riverside Station was affecting my mental health. That I needed to be moved for my own safety. He denied the request again. But this time, he told me why. Thomas, you're the 4th person to request transfer from Riverside in the past 6 months. And you're the first one still working here. The others quit. Just walked off the job mid-shift and never came back. What happened to them? No idea. We tried to follow up, but they'd all moved away. No forwarding addresses. Families claimed they'd just decided to start over somewhere new. He leaned forward. Look, I'll be straight with you. Something's going on at that station. I don't know what, but it's burning through personnel. Your senior staff. You've got experience. I need you to figure out what's happening before we have to shut the station down entirely. You're asking me to investigate. I'm asking you to keep working your shifts and document anything unusual. Officially unusual. Things I can put in a report and send to management. Not just feelings or weird sounds. Evidence. So I went back to Riverside, armed this time with recording equipment, cameras, sensors to measure electromagnetic fields and air quality and temperature. Everything I could think of to capture what was happening there. The equipment captured nothing. No anomalies, no voices, no breathing sounds. Just the normal ambient noise of a subway station. But I heard it, every shift. My name, called from the darkness. Invitations to come down, come see, come join. And I started seeing others responding to it. A woman standing at the dark end of the platform at 3 a.m., staring into the shadows. When I approached her, she didn't seem to notice me. Just kept staring, swaying slightly. "Mom, the next train won't arrive for another hour. You might want to wait near the front of the platform." She didn't respond. Didn't even blink. "Ma'am." Then she spoke, but not to me. "Yes, I hear you. I understand. I'll come." She stepped off the platform onto the tracks. I grabbed her before she could walk into the tunnel. Pulled her back, called for backup, got her to the surface. She fought me the whole way, screaming that she needed to go back, that they were waiting for her, that she'd been chosen. Paramedics took her away. I filed a report. Incident of mental disturbance, possible suicide attempt. It went into a file somewhere and was forgotten. But I couldn't forget, because I'd seen her face as she stared into that darkness. I'd seen the expression of absolute peace, of someone who'd heard the answer to a question they'd been asking their whole life. I'd seen that expression because I'd felt it myself. When I'd stood at that gap in the tunnel wall and been invited in, the darkness was calling people, had been calling people since the station opened, and some of them answered. How many? I started going through old incident reports. Falls onto the tracks at Riverside Station. People wandering into tunnels. Disappearances. Over 100 years of records, and a clear pattern emerged. 2 to 3 incidents per year. Every year. Always at night. Always at the dark end of the platform. People being called. People answering. People disappearing into the tunnels and never being found. And the rate was increasing. In the past decade, incidents had tripled. As if whatever was down there was getting stronger, or hungrier, or more desperate. I went back to the construction records. Read them more carefully this time. Found a reference I'd missed before. A notation about the prior excavation. The cavity they'd found wasn't natural. It had been dug deliberately. By whom or when, the records didn't say. But there were tool marks on the walls, ancient ones, and symbols carved into the stone. Someone had dug down there intentionally, had created that space for a purpose, and then they disappeared or died, or been sealed in when the subway was built. But something of them remained. Something that waited in the dark and called to people. called them to come down. Come see. Come join. I'm writing this report because I don't think I have much time left. The calls are getting louder, more insistent, harder to resist. I hear them during my days off now, even when I'm miles from the station. My name, whispered in quiet moments, promising peace and understanding and an end to all the confusion of living in the light. Last night, I found myself at Riverside Station at 4 a.m. I don't remember deciding to go there. Don't remember the drive or the walk down to the platform. I just suddenly became aware that I was standing at the dark end, staring into the tunnel mouth, and I could see them. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. All the people who'd answered the call over the past century. All the ones who'd gone down into the darkness and never come back. They were changed. Elongated, smooth, but they looked happy, peaceful, free from whatever had been troubling them in the world above. Thomas, it's time. We've waited so long. Come home. I took a step toward the edge of the platform. My phone rang. A coworker, calling to ask if I could cover a shift. Such a mundane, ordinary thing, but it broke the spell, brought me back to myself. I ran, got back to my car and drove home, and I haven't been back to Riverside since. But I can still hear them, calling my name, telling me they're waiting, that there's a place for me down there in the dark, where I won't have to think or worry or struggle anymore. And the terrible thing is, I want to go. Part of me genuinely wants to answer that call, step off the platform, walk into the tunnel, and keep walking until the darkness swallows me completely. Because they're right. I am tired of the light, tired of pretending the world makes sense, tired of being afraid. The darkness they're offering sounds peaceful. I've submitted my resignation. My supervisor hasn't accepted it yet, but he will. He has to. Because I'm not going back to that station. Not ever. But I don't think it matters anymore. I don't think I need to be at the station to hear them. They're in my head now. Part of me. And they're getting louder. One night soon, I'll wake up to find myself walking toward Riverside Station. My feet will carry me down to the platform, to the dark end, to the edge, and I'll step off, and I'll walk into the tunnel. And whatever is down there, whatever changed those construction workers a century ago, whatever has been calling to people for all these years, it will change me too. Maybe that's not the worst thing. Maybe becoming something else, something that exists in the dark, where nothing has to make sense, is better than this constant fear and exhaustion. Maybe the darkness is the answer. Maybe I should stop fighting and just answer the call. They're waiting for me. They've always been waiting. And I'm so tired of running. Story 5. I've been working the graveyard shift at Mel's Diner for 3 years now. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills, and I've always been a night person anyway. The quiet hours suit me. Most nights, we get maybe a dozen customers. Cab drivers, nurses coming off shift, insomniacs nursing coffee until dawn. Regulars, mostly. People I know by name and order. but sometimes we get the others. It started on a Tuesday in October. I remember. Because Tuesday nights are always dead, and I'd been considering asking Mel if I could leave early. The diner was empty except for Frank, a trucker who came in every Tuesday around midnight for pie and coffee. He was working on his second slice of apple when the door opened. The woman who entered was wrong in a way I couldn't immediately articulate. She was dressed normally enough, a pale blue dress that looked vintage, but well maintained, sensible shoes, a small purse clutched in gloved hands. Her hair was styled in careful waves. She might have stepped out of a photograph from the 1950s. But it was the way she moved. Too smooth, too deliberate. Like someone who had learned how to walk from watching others, but hadn't quite mastered the subtle imperfections that make movement human. She glided more than walked, her feet making no sound on the checkered linoleum floor. "Good evening," she said, sliding into a booth by the window. Her voice was pleasant but flat, like a recording played at slightly the wrong speed. "I'd like to order, please." I grabbed my notepad and approached her table, forcing my customer service smile. Up close, she looked even stranger. Her skin was too perfect, without pores or blemishes. Her makeup was flawless but somehow theatrical, as if applied by someone who'd never actually seen a human face up close. And her eyes. They were the right color, a soft brown, but they didn't quite focus. They looked at me and through me simultaneously. "What can I get you?" I asked. She studied the menu for a long moment, her finger tracing the laminated surface. "The pot roast dinner, please, with mashed potatoes and coffee. Black." Coming right up, I placed her order with Tony, our cook, who grunted acknowledgement without looking up from his phone. When I brought out her coffee, the woman was sitting perfectly still, hands folded on the table, staring at the dark window, not looking at her reflection or the street beyond, just staring at the glass itself, as if she could see something there that I couldn't. "Here you go," I said, setting down the cup. My hand brushed hers accidentally, and I jerked back. Her skin was cold. Not cool. Cold, like something that had been refrigerated. She didn't seem to notice my reaction. "Thank you," she said in that same flat tone. But she didn't drink the coffee. She just stared at it, watching the steam rise and dissipate. When Tony called out that her food was ready, I brought it over. The pot roast looked good. Tony actually took pride in his cooking, even at 2 a.m. I set it down in front of her with silverware and a napkin. "Enjoy," I said. She picked up her fork with mechanical precision, cut a piece of meat, brought it to her mouth, chewed exactly 15 times, swallowed, then did it again. Same motion, same number of chews. Like a wind, up toy going through its programmed routine, I busied myself behind the counter, wiping down surfaces that were already clean, sneaking glances at her. Frank had finished his pie and left, leaving me alone with Tony in the kitchen and this strange woman who ate like she was following an instruction manual. She ate everything on her plate, every single bite, Then she drank her coffee in small, measured sips. When she finished, she dabbed at her mouth with her napkin in a gesture that was almost, but not quite human, and stood up. "What do I owe you?" she asked. I calculated the bill. $14.50. She opened her purse and pulled out exact change. The bills were crisp, new, sequential. As she handed them to me, I noticed her palm. There were lines there, the normal lines of a human hand, but they didn't quite connect properly. They were like someone had drawn them on with a pen, approximating what they thought palm lines should look like without understanding their natural variation. "Thank you for your service," she said, and walked out. I watched through the window as she moved down the empty street, her gait still too smooth, too measured. She turned the corner and disappeared. That was weird. Tony said from the kitchen doorway, so he'd noticed too. "Yeah," I agreed, pocketing the money. Really weird. I tried to forget about her. Told myself she was just some eccentric woman, maybe mentally ill, maybe on the spectrum. People were strange. That's all it was. But she came back the next Tuesday. Same time, same entrance, same booth, same order, same mechanical eating, same exact change. And the Tuesday after that. And the Tuesday after that. By the fourth visit, I knew something was deeply wrong. I started paying closer attention to her. The way her chest didn't rise and fall with breathing. The way she never blinked. The way her shadow seemed slightly detached from her body, moving a fraction of a second too late. She's not real. I told Tony during her fifth visit. We were watching her through the kitchen pass, through where she couldn't see us. I don't know what she is, but she's not a real person. Maybe she's a ghost, Tony suggested. But he said it jokingly, not quite ready to accept the implications of what we were seeing. "Ghosts don't eat pot roast," I said. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure. What did I actually know about ghosts? Nothing but stories and movies. Maybe they did eat pot roast. Maybe they had to maintain the appearance of life. The sixth Tuesday, I decided to test my theory. When she ordered her usual meal, I deliberately brought her a turkey dinner instead. I wanted to see if she'd notice, if she'd correct me. She looked at the plate for a long moment. Then she picked up her fork and began to eat it in exactly the same way she ate the pot roast. 15 chews per bite. Mechanical precision. As if the actual food didn't matter. As if she was just going through the motions of eating, performing a ritual she didn't fully understand. When she finished, she looked up at me with those unfocused eyes. "That was delicious," she said in her flat voice. "The pot roast was excellent tonight." My blood ran cold. She hadn't even noticed, or she was pretending she hadn't. Either way, it confirmed what I'd been suspecting. This wasn't a person. This was something else. Something wearing the shape of a person, the way I might wear a coat. I started dreading Tuesdays, but I couldn't bring myself to refuse her service. What would I say? "Sorry, you're too creepy to eat here?" Besides, part of me was morbidly fascinated. I wanted to understand what she was, why she came, what she wanted. The 8th Tuesday, there were 2 of them. The woman in the pale blue dress arrived first, taking her usual booth. 10 minutes later, a man entered. He was dressed in a suit from the same era as her dress, his hair slicked back with too much pomade. He moved with the same unnatural smoothness, the same mechanical precision. He sat 3 booths away from the woman. They didn't acknowledge each other, didn't look at each other. But I could feel the connection between them, like a taut wire vibrating at a frequency just below hearing. The man ordered the chicken fried steak. He ate it in the same way the woman ate her pot roast. 15 chews, measured sips of coffee, perfect stillness between bites. When they both finished, they stood up simultaneously, paid with exact change, and left. Not together, but one after the other, maintaining the fiction that they were separate customers with no connection. Tony and I looked at each other. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? The 9th Tuesday, there were 4 of them. 2 women, 2 men, all dressed in clothes from decades past, all moving wrong, all ordering different meals, but eating them in exactly the same way. The 10th Tuesday, there were 8. By the 12th Tuesday, the diner was nearly full with them. They filled booth after booth, a silent crowd of not quite people, all performing the ritual of eating with mechanical devotion. The sound of silverware against plates created an eerie symphony. Perfectly timed, perfectly synchronized. Like an orchestra following a conductor, I couldn't see. The regular customers stopped coming. Frank took one look through the window on his usual night and drove away. Word must have spread, because by the 13th Tuesday, the only real customers we had were the occasional drunk or tourist who didn't know better. They'd take one look at the silent, strange diners and hurry out. "We should quit," Tony said. "This isn't right. This isn't natural." But I couldn't. I needed the money, yes, but it was more than that. I needed to understand. I needed to know what they were, and why they came to this specific diner, on this specific night, to perform this specific ritual. The 14th Tuesday, I worked up the courage to ask. The woman in the pale blue dress, the first one, the original, had finished her meal. As she stood to leave, I blocked her path. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I need to ask you something." She looked at me with those unfocused eyes. "Yes, what are you? Why do you come here?" For a long moment, she didn't respond. The diner was silent, except for the synchronized chewing of the others. Then, slowly, something that might have been a smile formed on her face. It was wrong. Too wide, too symmetrical, showing too many teeth. "We are the forgotten," she said, and now her voice had layers, as if multiple people were speaking through her at once. The ones who died alone, the ones whose deaths were unremarked, the ones who had no one to mourn them. We are the unremembered dead. My throat tightened. But why here? Why this diner? Because here we are served. Here we are seen. Here, for a brief moment, we matter. We exist. She tilted her head at an angle that would have broken a human neck. Don't you understand? This is all we have. This small performance. This pretense of life. It's all that keeps us from disappearing completely. But you're already dead. There are worse things than death, she said. There is being forgotten. There is ceasing to exist in memory as well as body. We come here to be remembered, even if only for an hour, even if only by you. She moved past me, and I let her go. The others began to file out, one by one, moving in their too smooth way. As each one passed, they looked at me with those unfocused eyes, and I saw in them a desperate, aching need, the need to be acknowledged, to be seen, to matter even in the smallest way. When the last one left, I collapsed into a booth, my hands shaking. Tony came out from the kitchen, his face ashen. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "Every word," he said. Christ, every word. We sat in silence for a long time. The diner felt wrong now, contaminated by the presence of the forgotten dead. I could still smell them. A faint odor of decay covered by too much perfume and cologne. I could still feel their desperate hunger, not for food, but for acknowledgement. Tony said finally, "I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't. I understood. I should have felt the same way. But instead, I felt something else. Pity. These things, these ghosts or echoes, or whatever they weren't evil. They were just lonely. Desperate for the smallest crumb of recognition, the briefest moment of mattering. Tony quit that night. Mel tried to find a replacement, but no one would take the job once they heard about the Tuesday night crowd. Eventually, Mel started talking about closing on Tuesdays entirely, but I convinced him to let me work alone. I'd handle it, I said. I'd manage. The 15th Tuesday, there were 16 of them. The 16th Tuesday, there were 32. They were multiplying. Word spreading somehow through whatever network connected the forgotten dead. Mel's diner had become their haven, their one night of the week when they could pretend to be alive, to be normal, to matter. I served them all. I took their orders, brought their food, collected their exact change. I looked each one in the eyes, those strange, unfocused eyes, and I saw them. I acknowledged them. I gave them what they craved, and slowly I began to notice something. The more I served them, the more I recognized them. Not because I'd seen them before in life. I hadn't. But I began to see their stories written in the way they held themselves, the clothes they wore, the meals they ordered. The woman in the pale blue dress had been a waitress herself, decades ago. She died of pneumonia in a charity ward, alone and unmourned. The man in the two, much pomade had been a door salesman who'd collapsed from a heart attack in a stranger's driveway. There was a teenage girl who died of a drug overdose in a bus station bathroom. An old man who'd frozen to death in his apartment during a cold snap not discovered for weeks. All of them had died alone. All of them had been forgotten. And all of them needed, desperately, to be seen. On the 20th Tuesday, something changed. I was serving the woman in the pale blue dress. My regular, I'd come to think of her. When she did something new, She smiled. A real smile, not the too wide, too symmetrical one. It was small and sad and utterly human. "Thank you," she said, and this time her voice had warmth in it. "Thank you for seeing us."
You're welcome,
I said, and I meant it. That night, when they all left, they seemed lighter somehow. Less desperate. Less frantic in their need to be acknowledged. As if having me witness them, truly see them, had fed some hunger deeper than the mechanical consumption of pot roast and coffee. The 21st Tuesday, there were fewer of them. Not all who had come before returned. The 22nd Tuesday, fewer still. It was as if, having been seen and acknowledged, some of them could finally rest, could finally let go. Now, 6 months later, it's just the woman in the pale blue dress and a handful of others. They come every Tuesday, order their meals, eat with slightly more natural movements. They're fading, I think. Or perhaps they're healing. It's hard to tell the difference. Last Tuesday, the woman in the pale blue dress did something she'd never done before. After she finished her meal, she reached across the table and touched my hand. Her skin was still cold, but there was something else there now. Gratitude, warmth, connection. "I think I'm almost ready," she said. "Ready for what?" I asked. "To let go, to stop coming back, to rest." She looked at me with eyes that were still unfocused, but somehow clearer than before. "You gave me that. You saw me when no one else would. You remembered me, even though you never knew me in life. That's a precious gift." "Will I see you again?" I asked, and was surprised to find that I'd miss her if she didn't return. "Maybe," she said. "Maybe not. But either way, thank you. Thank you for serving the forgotten." She left, and I haven't seen her since. I don't know if she'll come back next Tuesday. Part of me hopes she does. Part of me hopes she doesn't, because that would mean she's found peace. I still work the graveyard shift at Mel's Diner. The Tuesday night crowd has dwindled to just a few regulars now. The ones who need a little more time. A little more acknowledgement before they can let go. I serve them with the same care I'd give any customer. I see them. I remember them. Because that's what they need. That's all any of us need, really. To be seen. To be remembered. To matter. Even if only for an hour. Even if only in the eyes of a graveyard shift waitress at a run. Down diner, on the edge of town. The forgotten dead and dead come to Mel's Diner on Tuesday nights. And I serve them. Not because I have to, but because someone should. Story 6. The package arrived on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were my work from home days. And I was in the middle of a tedious conference call when the doorbell rang. I muted my microphone and went to answer it, expecting the textbooks I'd ordered for next semester's classes. The delivery driver was already back in his truck by the time I opened the door. The package sat on my doormat. A plain cardboard box, perhaps a foot square, surprisingly heavy for its size. I picked it up and noticed immediately that something was wrong. The label had my address, 327 Maple Street, apartment 4B, but the name was wrong. Marcus Webb, it said. I'd lived here for 3 years and had never heard of anyone by that name. I checked the return address, but there wasn't one. Just a smudged postmark from somewhere called Ashwood, a town I'd never heard of. I should have refused it. Should have called the delivery company right then and explained the mistake. But I was curious. And besides, the call was droning on in my earbuds. Something about quarterly projections that didn't concern me. And I'd need something to look at to stay awake. I set the box on my kitchen table and stared at it while pretending to pay attention to my colleagues. When the call finally ended, I examined the package more carefully. The cardboard was old, discolored in places, as if it had been sitting in a warehouse for years. The tape ceiling, it looked ancient, yellowed and brittle. My rational mind said to contact the building manager to sort out the mistake properly. But my hands were already reaching for scissors, already cutting through that old tape. Just a peek, I told myself. Just to see what it was, so I could properly describe it when I reported the error. Inside, nestled in packing material that crumbled to dust at my touch, was a wooden box. It was beautiful in an eerie way. Dark wood carved with symbols I didn't recognize. They looked a bit like Celtic knots, but wrong somehow. Asymmetrical. Unnerving. The symbols seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them, though that was probably just a trick of the light. The box had no visible seam, no obvious way to open it, but there was a small hole on one side, keyhole shaped, and beneath all the packing material, wrapped in cloth, was a key. An old brass key with the same strange symbols etched into its surface. I should have stopped there, packaged it all back up, called someone, anyone. But I didn't. I picked up the key. It was cold, unnaturally cold, like it had been stored in a freezer. The metal seemed to drink in the warmth from my hand, and the moment I touched it, I felt something. A pull. A certainty. This was meant for me. The name on the label was wrong, but the package knew where it was going. I inserted the key into the hole. It fit perfectly, turned with a soft click. The seam that I hadn't been able to see before suddenly appeared, and the box opened like a mouth. Inside was a sphere, roughly the size of a baseball, made of what looked like crystal or glass, but with darkness swirling inside it. Not just black, darkness. The absence of light. I could feel it pulling at my vision, trying to draw my gaze deeper. And inside that darkness, something moved. I jerked back, nearly dropping the box. But I couldn't look away. The sphere was hypnotic, beautiful and terrible at once. The darkness inside pulsed with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. Or perhaps my heartbeat was matching its rhythm. I couldn't tell anymore. There was something else in the box. A piece of paper, folded many times, yellowed with age. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The handwriting was spidery, difficult to read, written in what looked like fountain pen ink that had faded to brown. "Congratulations," it began. "You have been chosen as the keeper. The vessel must be maintained. The words must be spoken. The cycle must continue. Instructions will follow. Do not attempt to destroy the vessel. Do not attempt to flee. You are bound now. Wait for contact. That was all. No signature. No explanation of what the vessel was or what I was supposed to keep it for. Just those ominous sentences that made my stomach turn. I should have thrown it all away right then. Called the police. Done something. But I didn't. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that this was probably some kind of elaborate prank. I put the sphere back in the box, closed it, and shoved it in my closet. But I couldn't forget about it. That night, I dreamed of the sphere, of the darkness inside it opening like an eye, of something ancient and patient looking back at me. When I woke, drenched in sweat, I could have sworn I heard humming, a low, resonant sound that seemed to come from my closet and from everywhere at once. The next morning, I found the first note. It was slipped under my door, written on the same yellowed paper in the same spidery handwriting. You must feed it, once every 7 days. 7 drops of blood, 7 words in the old tongue. The words will come to you in dreams. Do not fail. The consequences would be unfortunate. I called the building manager, demanded to see security footage. Someone had to have delivered this note, but the footage showed nothing. My door closed and still, from midnight to dawn. No one came or went. Yet the note was there, undeniable, pressed into my palm. That night, the dreams began in earnest. I saw a city that had never existed, with towers that curved against geometry, and streets that folded into dimensions I couldn't comprehend. I heard voices chanting in a language I didn't know but somehow understood, and I saw the sphere, my sphere, at the center of it all, a dark sun around which everything else orbited. When I woke, words were on my lips. 7 words in a language that felt like it was scraping the inside of my skull. Nar, Dal, Vaj, Kuthra, Neb, Asga. I tried to forget them, tried to focus on work, on my mundane life as an adjunct philosophy professor. But the words echoed in my mind, growing louder, more insistent. And the sphere. I could feel it in my closet, pulsing, waiting. On the 7th day, I woke to find my apartment covered in symbols. The same symbols from the box, drawn on my walls, my furniture, my mirrors. They glowed faintly in the pre-dawn darkness. And my hands were stained with something that looked like charcoal, but smelled like burnt hair and rotted flowers. I had drawn them. In my sleep, I had drawn them, but I had no memory of it. The note that appeared that morning was more urgent. Today. The feeding must occur today, at sunset, or we will be forced to come and assist. You do not want that. I spent the day trying to find help. I called friends, but the moment I tried to explain the package, the sphere, the notes, my voice would catch. The words would tangle. I'd end up talking about something else entirely, as if some part of my mind was protecting the secret, or protecting them from it. I contacted mental health services. The therapist I spoke with was kind, suggested I might be experiencing a break from stress. She wanted to schedule an appointment for next week. I tried to tell her it needed to be sooner, but I couldn't explain why. The words wouldn't come. As sunset approached, I stood in my apartment, staring at the closet door. I could feel the sphere inside, patient and expectant. The 7 words were a constant whisper in my mind now, like static between radio stations. My blood seemed to know what was required, singing in my veins, eager to be spilled. I got a knife from the kitchen. A small one. I'd just prick my finger, I told myself. 7 drops. Say the words. See what happened. Then I'd document everything. Take it all to the authorities. Prove I wasn't losing my mind. I opened the closet. The box sat there, innocent in the fading light. I opened it. The sphere was brighter now, the darkness inside swirling with purpose. I could see shapes in it. Figures, maybe. Or the shadows of figures. Things that might once have been human but weren't anymore. I pricked my finger. The first drop of blood fell onto the sphere, and it hissed like water on a hot pan. The darkness inside convulsed. I felt a jolt of something. Pleasure, pain, impossible to distinguish, run up my arm. 6 more drops. Each one caused the sphere to pulse, to glow. The darkness began to thin, and I could see more clearly what was inside. There were things in there, trapped things, things that noticed me noticing them. I spoke the words. I, Nayar, Thal, Vas, Kuthra, Neb, Asgoth. The effect was immediate. The sphere blazed with dark light, a contradiction that hurt to perceive. The symbols on my walls flared in response, and I felt something lock into place, like a puzzle piece fitting into a slot I hadn't known existed. I was bound, truly bound now. Before, I might have been able to walk away, but not anymore. The feeding had completed something, initiated something. I was part of this now, whatever this was. The note the next morning confirmed it. Well done, Keeper. Your dedication has been noted. The next phase will begin soon. Be ready. Your service is appreciated. Service. The word made me feel sick. But I also felt something else. A terrible clarity. A sense of purpose that my academic career had never given me. I mattered now. In some cosmic, horrifying way, I mattered. The weeks that followed fell into a routine. Every 7 days, the feeding, the words, the pulsing of the sphere. I tried to study it, to understand what I was feeding and why. I researched online, looking for anything about Ashwood, Marcus Webb, or the symbols carved into the box. I found nothing concrete, just hints and whispers on obscure forums, references to the old vessels, to the keepers, to the patient ones who wait. A one forum post caught my attention. If you've been chosen as a keeper, know that you cannot escape. The vessels are anchors. They keep things bound that must remain bound. Feed them, speak the words, maintain the cycle. It's the most important work anyone can do, though the world will never know. We serve something older than humanity, something that would consume everything if not for us. But what was I keeping bound, and for whom? The answer came in my dreams. I saw the sphere not as a prison, but as a battery. It was storing something. Not the darkness inside it, but the darkness outside it. the darkness of our world, our fears, our potential for destruction. It was siphoning it away, containing it, keeping it from spilling over into something worse. Or at least, that's what the dreams told me. I had no way to verify if it was true or just another layer of the delusion. On the 91st day, the 13th feeding, something changed. When I spoke the words, the sphere cracked. Not breaking, but opening like a chrysalis. The darkness inside it coalesced into a shape, a figure. Tall, indistinct, but undeniably present. It spoke, not with a voice, but directly into my mind. "Keeper," it said, "you have proven yourself worthy. The time has come for the revelation. You must choose. Continue as you are, feeding and maintaining, never knowing the full truth, or accept the mantle completely. Become one of us. See what we see. Know what we know. Serve consciously rather than blindly." "What are you?" I whispered. "We are what stands between. We are the filters. We are the ones who drink in darkness so that others might walk in light. We have existed since humans first feared the dark. We will exist long after humans are dust, and we need keepers. Vessels like you to anchor our work in the physical world." I didn't agree to this. "Yes, you did. When you opened the box, when you spoke the first words. You chose this, even if you didn't understand what you were choosing. But now you can choose again, with knowledge, with understanding. Will you serve knowingly? Or would you prefer we find another and release you from your obligations?" The way it said. Release. Made it clear that wasn't a euphemism for going home and forgetting this happened. "What happens if I agree?" I asked. "You will be transformed, enhanced. You will see the world as it truly is. Beautiful and terrible, and far stranger than you ever imagined. You will join our order, the order of the anchored dark, and you will help us keep the balance, keep the real monsters at bay." And if I refuse? The figure's silence was answer enough. I thought about my life before the package. Teaching philosophy to disinterested undergraduates. Grading papers. Going home to an empty apartment. Existing but not living. Never quite fitting in. Never quite mattering. The sphere offered purpose. Horrible, inexplicable purpose. But purpose nonetheless. "I agree," I heard myself say. The figure reached out. If that formless darkness could be said to reach, and touched my forehead. The pain was exquisite. Like ice and fire, and every sensation I'd ever felt compressed into a single point. I felt something in my mind crack open, like the sphere itself had cracked open. Knowledge poured in. Terrible, beautiful knowledge. I could see them now. The things that moved in shadows. The entities that fed on fear and suffering. The ancient hungers that prowled at the edges of human perception. And I could see the network. Hundreds, maybe thousands of keepers like me scattered across the world. Each with their sphere, their vessel, their anchor. Each pulling in the darkness, containing it, keeping it from overwhelming everything. We were filters, sewage workers for cosmic waste, unsung, unknown, essential, welcome. The figure said, and now I understood it wasn't a monster. It was a keeper like me, just far, far older, and far more transformed. Welcome to your purpose. Welcome to the order. I woke on my floor, the sphere closed and inert in its box. But I was changed. I could see the threads now, the connections, the darkness that leaked from people's fears and fed things that shouldn't exist. And I could see my role in stopping it. That was 3 months ago. I still teach, still grade papers, still exist in the mundane world. But I also feed the sphere, speak the words, and once a month I attend the gatherings, in places that don't appear on maps, with people whose faces I can never quite remember. We compare notes. We reinforce each other's anchors. We do the work that keeps the world intact. Last week, I received another package. This one addressed correctly to me with no mistake. Inside was another box, another key, another sphere. The note said, "Congratulations on your advancement. You are now ready to maintain 2 anchors. The work expands. The darkness grows. We need you." I have the second sphere now. It sits next to the first, in a closet that seems larger on the inside than it should be. Soon I'll have a third, then a fourth. Each feeding requires more blood, more words, more of myself poured into the vessels. But that's fine. I understand now. This is my purpose, my calling, the most important work I'll ever do, and no one will ever know I'm doing it. Sometimes I wonder about Marcus Webb, the name on that first package. Did he refuse the calling? Is he dead, or transformed into something like the figure I saw? Or was Marcus Webb just a name, a placeholder, a way for the package to find its true target? It doesn't matter anymore. I am a keeper. I am an anchor. I stand between the world and the darkness, and I drink it in so others don't have to. Last night, I received a visitor, a group of them, actually. Figures in dark robes, their faces hidden. They came after midnight, materializing in my apartment without using the door. "Keeper," they said in unison. "The time has come. The Ancient One stirs. We need you at the convergence. Your anchors must be brought to the focal point. The great working begins." "What great working?" I asked. "The rebinding. Every 1,000 years, the seals must be renewed. The darkness must be re-anchored. And those of us who have proven ourselves will become the new foundations, the new pillars holding back the tide." They led me out into the night, not through my door, but through a way that opened in my wall, leading to somewhere else. A vast chamber deep underground, perhaps in a space that existed adjacent to underground. Hundreds of keepers were there, each carrying their vessels. The spheres glowed in the darkness, pulsing in synchrony. At the center of the chamber was something vast, something that hurt to look at. A darkness that made the darkness in the spheres look like shadows cast by candlelight. This was the source, the wellspring of all fear, all entropy, all the decay that gnaws at the edges of existence. And we, the keepers, were going to contain it, to bind it, to become part of the seal. "You will not leave this chamber as you entered," one of the robed figures told me. "You will become part of the working, part of the seal. Your physical form will be transformed, but your consciousness will remain aware, serving, forever. Forever. The word echoed in the chamber. I should have been terrified, should have tried to run. But I felt only calm, only purpose. This was what the package had been preparing me for. This was why I'd been chosen. I took my place in the circle. I opened my vessels. I spoke the words. Not 7 now, but 70 times 7. Words that made the air crack and reality shudder. Around me, the other keepers did the same. The darkness at the center of the chamber convulsed. It reached out with tendrils that weren't quite physical, touching each of us. When it touched me, I felt myself beginning to change. My flesh became less solid. My thoughts became more crystalline. I was being incorporated into something larger, something cosmic in scope. And in that moment of transformation, I understood the final truth. We weren't stopping the darkness. We were becoming it. Or rather, we were becoming the boundary between darkness and light. The interface. The membrane through which one could pass into the other. But only under strict control. We were the dam. And we would hold forever. As I write this, and I'm not sure how I'm writing this, since I no longer have hands in the conventional sense, I want you to understand something. If you receive a package with the wrong name, don't open it. If you find a wooden box with strange symbols, don't insert the key. If something offers you purpose in exchange for service, consider very carefully what you're accepting. But if you do open it, if you do accept the calling, know that it's not entirely terrible. There's a strange satisfaction in it, in knowing you matter, in serving something greater than yourself, even if that something is incomprehensible and potentially horrible. I am a keeper. I am part of the seal. I will hold back the darkness for 1,000 years until the next rebinding, the next generation of keepers. And if you're reading this, if these words have somehow found their way to you, well, that might not be an accident. Check your mail carefully. Story 7. I found the phone on a Tuesday afternoon while digging in the garden. Dorothy had been gone for 8 months, and I'd finally gotten around to the Memorial Rose Garden she'd always wanted. Better late than never, I told myself, though the irony of that phrase in the context of death wasn't lost on me. My name is Harold Baker. I'm 70, 3 years old, and I'd been married for 40, 7 years when Dorothy passed. The heart attack was sudden, they said. She didn't suffer, they said, as if that made the absence any easier to bear. The shovel hit something hard about 2 feet down. I expected rock or an old pipe. But when I cleared the dirt away, I found a smartphone. A relatively new one, from the look of it. In a waterproof case that had kept it pristine despite being buried. I pulled it out, brushed off the remaining soil, and examined it in the afternoon sun. It was fully charged. The screen lit up when I pressed the button, showing 100% battery. No carrier name, no signal bars, just the time and date. Today's date. There were no apps on the home screen except one. A camera icon, but not the standard one. This one was strange, stylized, almost like an eye. I'm not sure why I tapped it. Curiosity, I suppose. The loneliness of a man who spends most days talking to himself. The phone felt warm in my hand, almost alive. And when I opened the camera app, it showed the garden in front of me with perfect clarity. Then it flickered, and the image changed. It was still the garden, but different. Overgrown, completely neglected. Weeds had taken over what should have been roses. The fence had fallen in places. The whole space looked abandoned, unloved. And in the corner of the screen, a date appeared, March 15th. 2 years in the future. I nearly dropped the phone. When I lifted it again, the image had returned to normal. My partially dug garden, my afternoon shadow, falling across fresh earth. I should have reburied it right then. Should have filled the hole, planted the roses, never touched the thing again. But I didn't. I took it inside, made tea I didn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table examining it. The camera was the only app, but it wasn't really a camera. Or rather, it was something more. Every time I pointed it at something, I would see 2 images, the present and then something else. A future, sometimes days ahead, sometimes weeks, sometimes years. I pointed it at my living room and saw the same space, but dusty and dim. The furniture covered in sheets. The photos on the mantel faded by sunlight. Date 5 years ahead. I pointed it at my reflection in the hallway mirror and saw myself, older, thinner, sitting in a chair by a window. Just sitting, staring. The look in my eyes was empty in a way that frightened me. 84 years ahead. I pointed it at the front door and saw it unchanged. Always unchanged. As if no one ever used it anymore. Date 3 years ahead. Pattern after pattern. Future after future. All showing the same thing. Me, alone in this house, slowly disappearing into myself. No visitors, no changes, no life. Just existence grinding down to its eventual end. I turned the phone off, but it turned itself back on. The camera app opened by itself. And this time, when I looked at the screen, there was a message written in text that appeared and disappeared like breath on glass. You are caught in a loop. I dropped the phone. It landed screen up, and the camera was active, showing me my own face from below. I looked old and frightened. Another message. This is your 3rd time finding me. A 3rd message, appearing before I could process the 2nd. You always make the same choices. I backed away from the phone, my heart doing uncomfortable things in my chest. But I couldn't look away from the screen. More messages came, rapid fire. You bury yourself in grief. You refuse to connect. You retreat into memory. The garden is never finished. The house becomes a tomb. You die alone. Then time resets. You find me again. The loop continues. I sat heavily in a chair, staring at the phone on the floor. What are you? I asked aloud. The messages stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a new message formed. A teacher. A warning. A gift. What I am depends on what you do next. I don't understand. You will. Keep looking. Against every instinct. I picked up the phone. The camera activated automatically, and I found myself turning it toward different parts of the house. Each time I saw variations of the same future. Decline isolation, a slow fade into nothing. But then I pointed it at Dorothy's diary, the one she'd kept in the bedside table. The one I hadn't been able to bring myself to read. The image that appeared was different. Not the diary, but words. Pages and pages of text that I recognized as Dorothy's handwriting, scrolling past too fast to read. But certain phrases caught my eye. Harold needs people. He isolates when he's hurt. Afraid he's a burden. The garden was never about roses. It was about creating something that brings people together. He needs to let others in. The text stopped scrolling. A final message appeared. She knew. She left you instructions. But you never read them. I set the phone down carefully and went to the bedroom. Dorothy's diary sat where it had for 8 months, untouched. I'd told myself I would read it when I was ready, but the truth was I was afraid. Afraid of the grief it would bring. Afraid of her final thoughts. Afraid of what she might have wanted to say but never did. I opened it to the last entry, dated the day before she died. Harold, my love, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I know you. I know how you'll react. You'll retreat into yourself. You'll turn the house into a shrine. You'll work on that garden you promised me. But you'll make it a memorial instead of what I really wanted. A place of life and connection. The garden was never supposed to be just for me, Harold. It was supposed to be something that would keep you engaged with the world. A place where neighbors could stop by, where you could share your love of growing things, where life could continue. Don't lock yourself away. Don't let my death become your death too. Promise me. Promise me you'll let people in. I read the entire diary that night. 4 years of entries. The last year filled with increasing worry about what would happen to me after she was gone. Plans she'd made. People she'd asked to check on me. Seeds she'd bought for a community garden, not a memorial. When I finished, it was past midnight. The phone sat on the table, its screen glowing softly. I picked it up and pointed the camera at myself. The image showed me present day. Then it flickered to a future, but this time a different one. Me in the garden, but it was full of people. Neighbors I recognized, some I didn't. Children playing. The space alive with color and movement. And I was in the middle of it, talking, showing someone how to prune a rose bush. Date 2 years ahead. Another flicker. A different future. The house was brighter. Photos on the walls showed new memories. Gatherings, dinners, me with people I hadn't met yet. Date 3 years ahead. Another. Me older but not empty. Sitting with a woman I didn't recognize playing chess. Both of us smiling. Date 4 years ahead. The message appeared. These futures are possible, but only if you break the pattern. Only if you choose differently this time. How do I know this is real? How do I know you're not just showing me what I want to see? You don't. That's the point. The future isn't certain. It's a garden, Harold. It grows into what you tend. Right now, you're tending grief. Tend something else. I set the phone down and looked around my kitchen. 8 months of unwashed dishes in the sink. 8 months of unopened mail stacked on the counter. 8 months of letting everything go except my grief. In the morning, I called Dorothy's friend Margaret, the one who'd been leaving casseroles on my porch that I rarely ate. Asked if she'd help me with the garden. She arrived within an hour, and she brought 2 other women from the church. We worked all day. I told them about Dorothy's vision. Not a memorial, but a community space. A place where anyone could come to garden, to sit, to enjoy the flowers. They had ideas, additions. By the end of the day, we had a plan that was bigger and better than anything I'd imagined alone. The phone sat in my pocket. Sometimes I took it out, checked the futures it showed me. They shifted, changed, became more varied. Some still showed isolation, but those were becoming fewer. Other futures appeared. Futures with connection, with purpose, with life that extended beyond memory. It took 3 months to build the garden properly. More people joined the project. The man from 2 houses down who'd just retired and was looking for something to do. The young couple with twins who needed a safe outdoor space. The teenager who needed community service hours for school. The garden became what Dorothy had wanted. A living thing. A place that brought people together. The phone's futures became more consistent. Less isolation, more connection. But there was one future that kept appearing, no matter what I did. A moment about a year ahead, where I was standing in the completed garden, and a child was there. A boy, maybe 7 years old. He was looking at the phone. My phone, with the same expression I must have had when I first found it. And in that future, I was saying, sometimes we need to be shown what we're becoming before we can choose to become something else. I didn't understand it until one evening, working alone in the garden after everyone had gone home. I dug in a spot where we planned to plant the last section of roses, and my shovel hit something hard. I already knew what it would be. I pulled out a phone, identical to the one in my pocket, also fully charged, also with only one app. I now held 2 phones, the one I'd found and the one I'd just found. Or perhaps the one I was about to find, depending on how you looked at time. I opened the camera on the new phone and pointed it at the old one. The image showed a complex web of timelines, branching and reconnecting like roots. And I understood. The phone wasn't showing me the future. It was showing me the past. My past. The previous loops. The times I'd found it before and ignored its lessons. The times I'd chosen isolation over connection. The times I'd let grief consume me until time had to reset, giving me another chance. This was the first time I'd chosen differently. This was the first time I'd broken the pattern. The message appeared on the new phone. Well done. The loop is ending. But the lesson must continue. There are others who need it. Others caught in their own cycles. Will you help them? I looked at both phones, understanding now. The phone was never really about me. Or rather, I was never the first. Someone before me had learned this lesson, had been given the choice to help others learn it too. And they'd chosen yes. They'd buried the phone for someone else to find. Now it was my turn. I thought about the boy in the future vision, the one who would find the phone a year from now. I didn't know his story yet, but I would. I would get to know all the people in the garden, learn their struggles, understand their patterns, and when I saw someone caught in a loop, grief, anger, fear, whatever kept them from growing, I would know where to bury a phone. I returned the new phone to its hole and covered it with earth, planted roses above it. In a year, maybe 2, when someone needed it, the roots would bring it to the surface. Or they'd dig in just the right spot. The phone would find them. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. The original phone stays with me. I check it sometimes, see the futures branching ahead. Most of them are good now. Not perfect. Life isn't perfect, but connected, purposeful, alive. Sometimes I see other futures too. Ones where I'm very old, lying in a bed surrounded by people. People I've known through the garden. People whose lives intersected with mine because I chose to let them in. And in those futures I'm not afraid. I'm ready. I've lived. The garden is finished now. It's beautiful. Roses and herbs and vegetables and flowers, all mixed together in glorious chaos. People come and go freely. I've made keys for anyone who wants to help maintain it. On weekends, it's full of life and laughter. I'm not alone anymore, and I'm not who I was. Last week, I met a woman named Claire at the garden. She'd just lost her husband and had that look I recognized. The one I used to see in the mirror. The look of someone disappearing into grief. I showed her around, suggested she might enjoy working with the roses. She comes every day now, doesn't talk much yet, but she's here, connected, beginning to heal. In a few months, when I judge the time is right, I'll ask her to help me expand the garden. We'll dig in a specific spot, and she'll find a phone. She'll have the same choice I did. The same chance to break her pattern, to become something more than her grief. I think she'll make the right choice. But if she doesn't, the phone will wait. It will bury itself deeper, preserve itself, wait for time to reset or for the next person who needs its lesson. That's what the phone is. Not a curse or a trick. A teacher. A warning. A gift. It shows you what you're becoming so you can choose to become something else. And sometimes, that choice is the only thing that breaks the loop. Sometimes, it's the only thing that saves you from yourself. I'm Harold Baker. I'm 73 years old. I was married for 47 years to a woman who knew me better than I knew myself. And I'm no longer dying slowly in an empty house. I'm living. Finally, actually living. And that makes all the difference. The phone sits in my desk drawer now, wrapped in cloth, waiting. When the time comes, when I see someone else caught in their own loop, I'll know what to do. The lesson continues. The garden grows. And time for now, moves forward instead of in circles, that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. Story 8. I noticed the red star on a Tuesday night in March. I'd been on my roof. Our apartment building has rooftop access, and I liked to go up there to escape my roommate's endless Netflix marathons. It was a clear night, unusually clear for the city, and I'd brought a beer and my phone to waste time scrolling through social media under the stars. The star appeared suddenly. One moment the northeastern sky was filled with the normal constellations. Orion, the Big Dipper. The usual celestial architecture I'd grown up with. The next moment, there was something new. A point of light that pulsed with deep crimson, like a drop of blood suspended in the darkness. I sat up, nearly dropping my beer. Stars didn't just appear. I knew enough basic astronomy for that. New stars took thousands of years to become visible from Earth, their light crawling across impossible distances. They didn't just blink into existence on a random Tuesday night. I pulled up a star map app on my phone, holding it up to the sky to identify what I was seeing. The app showed the normal stars, the known constellations, but it didn't show the red star. According to the app, there was nothing there. Just empty space. I looked again with my naked eyes. The star was still there, pulsing, growing slightly brighter as I watched, as if it were getting closer, or as if it were noticing that I was noticing it. I took a photo, but the image showed nothing unusual. Just the regular stars, no red anomaly. I tried video, same result. Whatever this was, my phone couldn't capture it. Only my eyes could see it. That's impossible, I muttered, but even as I said it, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the March air, because I knew what I was seeing, and I knew it shouldn't exist. I went back downstairs, shaken. My roommate, Tyler, was sprawled on the couch watching some true crime documentary. "Hey, can you come upstairs for a second?" I asked. "I want to show you something." He groaned, but followed me up. When we got to the roof, I pointed to the northeastern sky. "Do you see anything weird? Any star that looks different?" Tyler squinted at the sky. "Oh, they all look like stars, man. What am I supposed to be seeing?" "The red one. Right there." I pointed directly at it. The star pulsed, brighter now, definitely brighter than it had been 10 minutes ago. "I don't see any red star," Tyler said. "Are you feeling okay? You seem stressed. Maybe lay off the beer." "I'm not drunk," I snapped. "It's right there. Bright red, pulsing. You really don't see it." He looked at me with genuine concern. "Dude, there's nothing there. Maybe you should get some sleep." After he went back downstairs, I stayed on the roof for another hour, watching the red star. It continued to brighten, continued to pulse with that deep, blood-colored light. And the longer I watched it, the more I became convinced of two things. First, that it was real, despite what my phone and my roommate said. And second, that it was aware of me. I know how that sounds. Stars aren't conscious. They're balls of fusing hydrogen, governed by physics, not intent. But this star, this thing, felt different. Every pulse seemed timed to my heartbeat. When I looked away, I could feel it pulling at my attention, demanding that I look back. I forced myself to go inside, to sleep, but I dreamed of the red star, dreamed of it growing larger, closer, until it filled the entire sky. And in my dream, I could hear something. Not a sound, but a sensation of communication. A message encoded in the pulsing light. We see you seeing us. We are coming. We have always been coming. I woke at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat. Without thinking, I went to my window and looked out at the night sky. The red star was still there, brighter now, definitely brighter. And I could have sworn it was closer, occupying a slightly different position than it had hours before. Stars don't move. Not like that. Not in the span of hours. I spent the next day trying to function normally, but I couldn't stop thinking about the star. I Googled everything I could think of. Astronomical anomalies, optical illusions, hallucinations caused by stress or sleep deprivation. Nothing fit. Nothing explained a pulsing red star that only I could see. That didn't show up on cameras or star maps, that moved across the sky too fast and seemed to watch me watching it. I called the local observatory. The person who answered was patient, but clearly thought I was a crank. There are no new celestial objects visible from our latitude, she said. If you're seeing something unusual, it might be a planet. Mars can appear quite red, or possibly an aircraft. It's not Mars, I said. I know where Mars is. This is something else. Something new. Sir, if there were a new visible star, we'd have detected it. Our instruments are very sensitive. What if your instruments can't detect it? I interrupted. What if it's something that only... I don't know, that only some people can see. There was a pause. That would be a medical issue, not an astronomical one. I'd recommend seeing a doctor. Everyone thought I was crazy. Tyler suggested I was having a breakdown from work stress. My sister said maybe I needed to cut back on my medication or increase it. She wasn't sure which. My doctor ordered blood tests and a CT scan, checking for brain tumors or chemical imbalances. But the red star kept appearing every night, and it kept getting brighter, closer. By the end of the first week, it was the brightest object in the sky except for the moon. A ruby beacon pulsing in the northeast, demanding attention. And still, according to everyone else, it didn't exist. I started seeing others who could see it. Not many. Maybe 1 in 100 people. I could tell who they were by the way they moved. They'd stop on sidewalks, tilting their heads back to stare at the sky with expressions of wonder and dread. They'd walk into lampposts or stand in the middle of crosswalks, transfixed by something invisible to everyone else. I approached a woman who'd been standing outside a coffee shop for 10 minutes, staring upward. You can see it too, can't you? The red star. She looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. What is it? Why can we see it when no one else can? I don't know, I admitted. But it's getting closer. I think it's coming here. That's impossible. She whispered, but she didn't sound convinced. Stars don't move like that. They don't. She stopped, her gaze drawn back to the sky. Oh God, it's pulsing, like a heartbeat, like it's alive. I started documenting everything, writing down observations, tracking the star's position each night, noting how much brighter it became. The pattern was clear. It was approaching Earth at an impossible rate. If it continued at this speed, it would be here, wherever, meant for a star, within a month. I found others online. There was a small community of us scattered across the world, all seeing the same thing. A red star that didn't exist according to astronomy, that only some people could perceive. We shared theories. Some thought it was a mass hallucination, a psychological phenomenon triggered by solar flares or cosmic radiation. Others believed it was something supernatural, an omen or a curse. A few insisted it was alien, a ship or construct from another civilization, visible only to certain frequencies of human perception. None of us knew for sure. We only knew it was coming. By the third week, the red star was bright enough to cast shadows at night. I could see my reflection in windows, backlit by crimson light that nobody else saw. The shadows it cast were wrong. Too long, too dark, moving independently of how I moved. As if the star's light was revealing something that normal light concealed, I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that message again, clearer now. We see you seeing us. We are coming. We have always been coming. Tyler moved out. He said I was making him uncomfortable, standing at the window every night, muttering about stars and shadows. My boss put me on leave after I fell asleep at my desk 3 times in 1 week. My sister stopped answering my calls. I was alone with the red star and the others who could see it. We communicated mostly online, sharing our observations, our theories, our growing sense of dread. Because we all felt it now. The star wasn't just approaching. It was arriving, coming into phase with our reality in some way we couldn't articulate, but could feel in our bones. On the 32nd night, the star stopped pulsing. It hung in the northeastern sky, a fixed point of blood, red light, no longer approaching. It had arrived, and now it was just there, waiting. That's when the dreams changed. Now when I slept, I wasn't looking at the star from Earth. I was looking at Earth from the star. I could see the planet turning below me, small and blue and fragile, and I could see others like me. Thousands of them, maybe millions, scattered across the globe. Pinpoints of awareness, of perception. People who could see what they shouldn't see. And I understood. Finally, I understood. The red star wasn't coming to Earth. It was already here. Had always been here. It existed in some frequency of reality that most people couldn't perceive. Invisible to instruments and to most human eyes. But some of us, through mutation or sensitivity or sheer chance, could see across that divide, could perceive what was always there, waiting. And now that it had stopped moving, now that it had finished its arrival or awakening, or whatever this was, it was ready for the next phase. The message came on the 33rd night. Not in words, not in sound, but in pure understanding downloaded directly into my consciousness. You are the witnesses. You are the anchors. Through you, we can manifest. Through your seeing, we can become. I felt it then. The weight of being perceived by something vast. The red star wasn't just light. It was attention. Cosmic attention focused on Earth, on humanity. On the few of us who could see it seeing us. And by acknowledging its existence, by witnessing it, we were giving it power, making it more real. The others online were experiencing the same revelation. Our discussion boards filled with frightened messages. It's using us. Our perception is giving it form. Why need to stop looking? Stop seeing it. Maybe if we ignore it, it'll go away. Too late. It knows we see it. It's locked on to us. I tried. God, I tried. I kept my curtains closed. Avoided windows. Didn't go outside after dark. But I could still feel it. The red star's presence, like pressure behind my eyes. And in my peripheral vision, no matter where I looked, there was a faint crimson glow. It had marked us. We couldn't unsee it any more than we could forget how to see. On the 40th night, the first person disappeared. Her name was Melissa, one of our online group. She'd posted about seeing the star, about the dreams, about understanding that we were anchors for something trying to manifest. Then she posted, "It's in my room." Not the star. Something else. Something that came through because of the star. It's reaching for me. That was her last message. The next day, her roommate reported her missing. Police found her apartment empty, undisturbed, no signs of struggle. She'd simply vanished. Over the next week, 12 more people disappeared. All of them from our group. All of them witnesses to the red star. The pattern was cleared. First you see the star, then you anchor it. Then something comes through the connection you've created. Something was using us as doorways. I felt it approaching on the 48th night. I was in my apartment. Tyler long gone. No one to hear me if I screamed. The red star filled my window, despite the closed curtains, its light seeping through the fabric, through the walls, through reality itself. And then I saw it. The thing that had been traveling behind the star, using the star as a marker, a beacon, a doorway. It looked like nothing I could describe. Geometry that hurt to perceive. Colors that didn't exist in normal light. Movement that implied dimensions my brain couldn't process. It reached for me with appendages that might have been tentacles or might have been thoughts given form. I felt its touch, cold and burning simultaneously, passing through my skin like I was made of fog. "Thank you for seeing us," it communicated. "Thank you for giving us form. We have traveled so far, waited so long. You witnesses make us possible." I didn't mean to. I gasped. I didn't know. Intent is irrelevant. Perception is the key. You saw, therefore we could arrive. And now, as payment for our passage, you will join us. I felt myself being pulled. Not physically. My body remained in my apartment. But something else, some essential part of me, was being drawn into that impossible geometry. That space, between spaces where the thing existed. I was going to disappear. Like Melissa. Like the others. Pulled through the doorway I'd accidentally created by seeing the red star. But then I realized something. A last, desperate understanding. I wasn't the only witness. You're wrong, I thought at the thing. I'm not the key. We all are. Every witness is a doorway. And if I close mine, you'll still have thousands more. True, it acknowledged. But you are THI's doorway, and this doorway is open now. It cannot be closed. Everything can close. I just have to stop seeing. And I did the only thing I could think of. I closed my eyes. Not my physical eyes, but the inner eye. The perception that had allowed me to see the star in the first place. I retreated inward, pulling my awareness away from the northeastern sky, from the crimson light, from the thing reaching through the doorway of my perception. I refused to see. The thing screamed, not with sound, but with a sensation of frustrated rage. It had been so close. I had been so open. And now I was closing, sealing the doorway, cutting off its access. You cannot ignore us forever, it raged. Once you have seen, you cannot unsee. We will wait. We are patient. Eventually, you will look again. Maybe, I thought back, but not tonight. The presence withdrew. The pressure behind my eyes faded. When I opened my physical eyes again, the red star was still there in the sky, but dimmer now, receding, as if by refusing to engage, by withdrawing my witnessing, I'd made it less real. I grabbed my phone and posted to our group. Stop looking at it. Stop witnessing. That's what it wants. Our attention gives it power. Close your inner eyes. Refuse to see. Some of them understood. Some of them managed to do what I'd done, to pull back their perception, to close their doorways. The red star grew dimmer for them too, but others couldn't, or wouldn't. They'd been watching too long, had become too entangled. Over the next month, 3 more people from our group disappeared. 3 doorways through which something hungry and patient slipped into our reality. The red star is still there. I know it is, though I don't look at it anymore. I can feel it in my peripheral awareness, waiting for me to slip, to glance up by accident, to witness it again and reopen the door I closed. It's been 6 months now. I've learned to navigate by not looking up. I keep my gaze down, focused on the ground, on the immediate world around me. I've trained myself to not wonder what's in the northeastern sky, to not think about the crimson light I know is there. But it's hard, so hard. Because once you've seen something, really seen it, forgetting is almost impossible. The knowledge lives in your brain, a splinter of awareness that can't be removed. I see others sometimes, people walking with their heads down, their eyes averted from the sky. We recognize each other. We witnesses who learned to stop witnessing. We don't speak. Don't acknowledge each other. Because acknowledgement is a form of seeing, and seeing gives power to what shouldn't be seen. The red star is still claiming people. I see the reports sometimes. Mysterious disappearances, people vanishing from locked rooms, no evidence of where they went. The news treats them as unsolved mysteries. But I know. They're the ones who couldn't stop looking, who couldn't close their inner eyes. If you're reading this, if you're tempted to go outside and look up at the northeastern sky, searching for a red star, don't. Please don't. Because some things, once seen, create connections that can't be broken. Some things use our perception as a bridge, our attention as a doorway. The red star is waiting, patient, hungry, ready to use your seeing as a gateway into our world. And it doesn't care if you believe in it or not. It only cares if you look. Story 9. The night the lights went out, I was making tea. Not because I particularly wanted tea, but because the ritual of it, the waiting for water to boil, the careful measuring of leaves, the slow steeping, had become my way of marking the end of another identical day. The kettle had just begun its low whistle when everything went dark. Not the gradual dimming of a brownout, but an instantaneous, absolute darkness that swallowed every photon in my apartment. I stood frozen, my hand still extended toward the stove I could no longer see. The kettle continued its ascending scream, a sound that seemed obscenely loud in the sudden void. I fumbled for the knob, turned it, and the whistle died, leaving behind a silence that felt somehow thicker than silence should be. My phone. The thought arrived with a small surge of relief. I patted my pockets, felt the familiar rectangle, and pulled it out. The screen wouldn't wake. I pressed the power button once, twice, held it down. Nothing. The phone was dead, which made no sense. I'd charged it to 90% just an hour ago. I moved carefully through my apartment, hands outstretched, feeling my way toward the window. My fingers brushed the wall, traced along it until they found the frame, then the glass. I pulled back the curtain and looked out. The city was gone. Not destroyed, simply absent. Where there should have been streetlights, traffic signals, the glow of 1,000 windows, there was only darkness so complete it seemed to press against the glass. I couldn't even see the building across the street, though I knew it stood less than 30 feet away. I stood there for what might have been minutes or hours. Time loses its shape in absolute darkness, trying to understand what I was seeing, or rather, what I wasn't seeing. A power outage I could comprehend, but this totality, this erasure of every light source, including my fully charged phone, suggested something else entirely. That's when I heard it, a sound from deeper in my apartment. Not a crash or a bang, but something worse. The whisper of fabric against fabric. The almost imperceptible creak of floorboards adjusting to new weight. The sounds of something moving carefully, deliberately, through my space. I wasn't alone. My breath caught in my chest. I held perfectly still, straining to hear over the thunder of my own heartbeat. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then it came again. Closer now. The soft friction of movement, and beneath it, something else. Not quite human breathing, but a rhythm of inhalation and exhalation that suggested lungs, airways, a living thing. "Hello." My voice came out smaller than I intended, swallowed almost immediately by the darkness. The breathing stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound had been. I could feel attention turning toward me, could sense something orienting itself in my direction. And then it moved. I ran. I don't remember making the decision. My body simply acted. I bolted from the window, hands stretched ahead, moving on muscle memory through the geography of my own apartment. I crashed into the coffee table. Pain exploded in my shin, then ricocheted off, stumbling toward where I knew the door should be. Behind me, I could hear it following. Not running, but moving with a horrible, unhurried certainty. The sounds it made were wrong. Joints bending at angles that shouldn't produce those particular clicks. Weight distributed in ways that didn't match any human gait I'd ever heard. My hands found the door, scrabbled for the lock, turned it. I yanked the door open and plunged into the hallway. The darkness of the hallway was identical to the darkness of my apartment. Absolute, impenetrable. I chose a direction at random and ran, one hand trailing along the wall, the other stretched ahead. Apartment doors flashed by under my fingers. Their numbers invisible, but their spacing familiar from years of walking this corridor. I could still hear it behind me, keeping pace. Never quite catching up, but never falling behind either. The stairwell door. I crashed through it and began descending, taking the stairs 3 at a time, one hand gripping the railing. Down one flight, 2, 3. My building had 12 floors. I lived on the 7th. I just had to get to the ground floor, get outside, find other people, find help. On the 4th floor landing, I stopped. I had to stop. My lungs were screaming, my legs trembling. I pressed my back against the wall and tried to quiet my breathing, tried to listen. Nothing. No footsteps on the stairs above, no breathing, no sound at all except my own labored gasps. Had I lost it, or had it simply stopped? Waiting in the darkness above, patient and inevitable. I forced myself to move again, more slowly now, trying to be quiet. Down to the 3rd floor, the 2nd, the 1st. The ground floor door should have had an illuminated exit sign above it. But of course, there was nothing. I felt for the door, found it, pushed through. The lobby was as dark as everything else. I moved toward where the main entrance should be, hands outstretched, and found the glass doors. They were locked. The building had security doors that locked automatically after 10 p.m., requiring a key card or code to exit. I felt along the wall beside the door, searching for the emergency release bar that I knew must be there by law. My fingers found it, and I pushed. The door swung open with a pneumatic hiss, and I stumbled outside. Outside wasn't better. The street was the same absolute darkness, the same negation of light. I turned in a slow circle, seeing nothing, hearing nothing. No traffic, no sirens, no sounds of a city responding to a massive power failure. Just silence and darkness, infinite in all directions. I started walking, one hand extended, moving down what I hoped was the sidewalk. I counted my steps, trying to maintain some sense of distance and direction. At 100 steps, I turned what I thought was right, walking toward where the main avenue should be. Surely there would be people there, emergency services, something. I walked for what felt like hours. The darkness never changed, never lightened. I encountered no people, no cars, no buildings I could identify. Several times I thought I heard that breathing again, somewhere behind me, pacing me. But when I stopped to listen, there was only silence. Eventually, exhaustion forced me to stop. I sat down, on pavement, on grass. I couldn't tell, and tried to think. None of this made sense. A citywide power outage couldn't explain the absence of all light, including stars, moon, ambient glow. It couldn't explain the dead silence, or the thing in my apartment, or the feeling I'd had since leaving my building that I was walking in place, making no actual progress in any direction. I closed my eyes, not that it made any difference, and tried to calm my breathing, to think rationally about my situation. That's when I felt it, a presence very close. Not moving, just there, waiting for me to acknowledge it. I opened my eyes to the same darkness. "What do you want?" I whispered. The breathing began again, very near, and then, impossibly, a voice. My voice, but not coming from my throat. "I want you to stop running." Every muscle in my body locked. The voice was mine, same pitch, same timbre. Even the same slight hoarseness I'd developed from years of not quite drinking enough water. But it came from the darkness in front of me. "Who are you?" The words came out broken. "You know who I am." The voice, my voice, sounded almost sad. "You've always known. You just keep running." I scrambled backward, but hands caught me. Not grabbing, not violent, just steadying me. Hands the same size as mine, the same shape. I could feel it now. The thing from my apartment, crouched beside me in the darkness. Its breathing matched mine exactly. Inhale for inhale, exhale for exhale. "I don't understand," I said, but that was a lie. On some level deeper than conscious thought, I did understand. I'd been understanding for weeks now, maybe months. The isolation that had become so complete, I could go days without speaking to another person. The way I'd started avoiding mirrors. The growing sense that something essential about myself was becoming untethered, drifting away into some interior darkness. "You've been hiding from me for a long time," it said. Still using my voice, still speaking with perfect familiarity. Building walls, turning away, pretending I don't exist. So I had to make you see, had to take away all the lights you've been using to keep me out. "You're not real," I said. "This isn't real." "I'm as real as you are. More. Maybe because I'm the part of you that you refuse to look at. All that fear, all that darkness you pretend isn't there. Where did you think it goes? It doesn't disappear. It grows. It gets stronger. It becomes me." I felt it move closer, felt its presence like a weight against my chest. "I just want to exist," it said softly. "I want you to stop pretending I'm not part of you." I don't know what made me do what I did next. Maybe desperation. maybe exhaustion, maybe some small seed of understanding. I reached out in the darkness, reached toward where I sensed it crouching, and I touched it. My hand made contact with fabric. A shirt, my shirt, the one I'd been wearing, and beneath it warmth. Skin, a shoulder that matched mine in every dimension. "I see you," I whispered. And as I said it, I realized it was true. Not with my eyes, but with something deeper. I saw it all. The fear I'd been carrying for years, the parts of myself I'd rejected, the darkness I'd refused to acknowledge. Not because they were evil or wrong, but because I'd been taught that some emotions, some parts of the psyche, were supposed to remain hidden, suppressed, denied. "I see you," I said again, and this time I meant it as acceptance. "You're part of me." The thing in the darkness made a sound, half sigh, half sob. And then, gradually, I became aware of light. Not much at first. Just the faintest gray, the suggestion of form in the emptiness. It grew slowly, incrementally, like dawn approaching after the longest night. I could see shapes now. Trees, buildings. The bench I was sitting on, in what I recognized as the small park 2 blocks from my apartment. And sitting beside me, I could see myself, or a version of myself. It looked like me if I'd stopped sleeping, stopped eating, stopped engaging with the world. Hollow-eyed and thin, wearing clothes that hung loose, but undeniably me. As I watched, it began to change. Or maybe I began to change. The boundaries between us blurred, overlapped. I felt it folding back into me, or me expanding to encompass it. The distinction didn't matter. What mattered was that for the first time, in longer than I could remember, I felt whole. Complete. The light continued to grow. Around the park, I could see windows lighting up in apartment buildings. Street lamps flickered to life. In the distance, I heard a siren, then another. The normal sounds of a city at night. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. I pulled it out. The screen showed 11:47 p.m. and a string of notifications. Text messages, news alerts, missed calls. The most recent was a breaking news notification. Massive power outage affects city core. Power being restored sector by sector. I looked at the bench beside me. I was alone. But I didn't feel alone. Not in the hollow way I had before. Instead, I felt the presence of that other version of myself, integrated now, no longer separate or threatening. Just part of me, part of the whole. I stood up slowly, testing my legs. They held. I began walking back toward my apartment, and the walk felt different. More solid, more certain. The darkness was still there, of course. It would always be there. But it was no longer something to run from. Because I had finally understood what it had been trying to tell me all along. You can't escape your own shadow. You can only choose whether to let it chase you or to turn around and take its hand. When I reached my building, the lights were on in half the windows. I rode the elevator back to the 7th floor, unlocked my apartment, and stepped inside. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. The kettle on the stove, my cup waiting beside it. I finished making my tea, and as I did, I glanced at my reflection in the dark window. For the first time in months, I didn't look away. I saw myself, complete and whole, darkness and light together, and I smiled. Because I was no longer afraid of what I might see looking back. And with that, our time tonight comes to an end. To everyone who stayed until the very last moment, thank you. Truly, having you here sharing these shadows makes the darkness feel a little less empty. I'm grateful you chose to spend a piece of your night here with me. I hope these stories brought you that quiet shiver, the kind that makes you feel alive. There's something special about this, all of us, connected by the love of a good story, whispered in the dark. I'll be back soon with more echoes from the void, more mysteries waiting to be told. Until then, rest well, sleep deeply, and if you hear footsteps that shouldn't be there, just remember they're only stories. Oh, and before you drift off, if you enjoyed our time together, a like and a subscribe will make sure we meet again, somewhere in the dark. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time